Hello, beautiful people. You've just landed on Harry What Ifs. Today's featured story is What If a Dark Witch from Durmstrang fell in love with Harry at first sight and became his shadow queen. If you're new here, welcome to the family. Hit subscribe and the notification bell. And if you're returning, you know the drill, like and share. Enough talk, let's get into the story. Chapter 1, The Witch from the North. Harry winced as the quill sliced into his skin again, carving, "I must not tell lies," in his own blood. The special quill Umbridge had given him didn't need ink, it used his blood instead. 5 days of detention, and his hand was raw and bleeding. "That will be all for tonight, Mr. Potter," Umbridge said with her sickly sweet smile. "Same time tomorrow." Harry stood up, flexing his stinging hand. He wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing him in pain. "Good night, Professor," he said flatly. The halls of Hogwarts were mostly empty as Harry made his way back to Gryffindor Tower. His 5th year was barely a week old, and it was already worse than he could have imagined. The Daily Prophet had spent all summer painting him as an attention-seeking liar. Most students avoided him like he had dragonpox. The Ministry had planted Umbridge at Hogwarts to keep everyone in line. And Dumbledore. Dumbledore wouldn't even look at him. A commotion down the corridor snapped Harry from his thoughts. Students were gathering around the entrance hall, whispering excitedly. "What's going on?" Harry asked, spotting Ron's red hair in the crowd. "Bloody hell, Harry, you missed it," Ron said. "Durmstrang's here." "What?" Harry pushed through to get a better view. Why would Durmstrang be at Hogwarts? Hermione appeared at his side, clutching a stack of books. "It's some new international magical cooperation initiative. The Ministry's idea, according to McGonagall. A dozen Durmstrang students will be studying at Hogwarts this term." "Ministry's idea? Sounds dodgy," Harry muttered. "That's what I thought," Hermione whispered. "It's all very sudden. I think Fudge wants to strengthen ties with schools that don't support Dumbledore." The crowd shifted as the great oak doors opened, admitting a blast of cold air and a group of students in blood-red robes. Unlike the theatrical entrance during the Triwizard Tournament, this was understated, just a dozen students following a tall, severe-looking wizard with a silver goatee. "That's Professor Volkov," Hermione whispered. "He's their deputy headmaster." Harry scanned the Durmstrang students, all looking stern and imposing in their crimson uniforms. His eyes locked with a girl standing toward the back of the group. She was tall and slim with pale skin that seemed to glow in the torchlight. Her dark hair was braided tightly against her head, accentuating sharp cheekbones and piercing blue eyes that reminded Harry of frozen lakes. Those eyes widened slightly when they met his. For a moment, neither looked away. "Mr. Potter. Kindly return to your dormitory at once." Professor McGonagall's voice broke the moment. "All students not assigned as hosts, please clear the entrance hall immediately." As the crowd dispersed, Harry glanced back. The Durmstrang girl was still watching him, her head tilted slightly as if trying to solve a puzzle. "She's staring at you," Ron said. "Who?" Harry asked, though he knew exactly who Ron meant. "That Durmstrang girl. Probably wondering if you're really mental like the prophet says." "Thanks, Ron," Harry said dryly. "Let's go," Hermione urged. "Before McGonagall takes points." Back in the common room, Harry sank into his favorite armchair by the fire, his throbbing hand momentarily forgotten. "So what happened in detention?" Hermione asked, sitting across from him. Harry hesitated, then showed them his hand. "That evil hag." Hermione gasped. "That's torture. You've got to report this." "To who?" Harry asked bitterly. "Dumbledore won't even look at me. McGonagall would just tell me to keep my head down." "This isn't right, mate," Ron said, looking genuinely disturbed. "None of this is right," Harry replied, staring into the fire. "Voldemort's out there gathering followers, and we're stuck here with the Ministry controlling Hogwarts and everyone thinking I'm crazy. He sighed. And now we've got Durmstrang students to deal with. Perfect. Well, they can't all be like Karkaroff, Hermione said reasonably. And international cooperation isn't inherently a bad idea. Yeah, but the timing's suspicious, Harry said. Fudge is probably hoping they'll spy on Dumbledore. Or you, Ron added unhelpfully. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Between his throbbing hand and his swirling thoughts, Harry tossed and turned for hours. When he finally drifted off, he dreamed of a frozen lake with something dangerous lurking beneath the surface, watching him through the ice with piercing blue eyes. The fifth-year Gryffindors had defense against the dark arts with the Slytherins the next morning. Harry, Ron, and Hermione arrived to find the classroom buzzing with excitement. What's going on? Harry asked Neville. 3 Durmstrang students are joining our class, Neville replied. Umbridge doesn't look happy about it. Indeed, Umbridge was at her desk, her wide mouth stretched in a forced smile as she spoke with Professor Volkov. The Durmstrang deputy headmaster nodded stiffly, then turned to leave, passing 3 students who had just entered. Harry recognized one immediately, the girl with the piercing blue eyes. Up close, she looked even more striking. She stood with perfect posture, scanning the room with cool detachment until her gaze landed on Harry. A slight smile curved her lips. Good morning, class, Umbridge simpered. As you can see, we have 3 guests from Durmstrang Institute joining us today. Please welcome Valeria Volkov, Nikolai Petrov, and Stefan Kowalski. The 3 Durmstrang students nodded but didn't smile. Wait, Volkov. Ron whispered. Like the professor? His daughter, obviously, Hermione whispered back. Umbridge directed the Durmstrang students to empty seats. To Harry's surprise, Valeria walked directly to the empty desk beside his. Is this seat taken? She asked in lightly accented English, her voice deeper than he expected. No, Harry managed, aware that everyone was watching. She sat down gracefully, placing her wand on the desk, black wood with silver inlay that seemed to shimmer in the light. Now, wands away and books out, please, Umbridge trilled. We'll continue with Chapter 2 of Defensive Magical Theory. The class groaned collectively. Problem? Valeria whispered to Harry. We don't actually practice magic in this class, Harry explained quietly. Just read the textbook. Valeria's eyebrows rose. You're joking. Wish I was. But this is defense against the dark arts, yes. How do you learn to defend without practicing? According to her, we don't need to practice. Just knowing the theory is enough. Valeria's expression darkened. That's absurd. Miss Volkov, Umbridge called sweetly. At Durmstrang, I'm sure you follow your teacher's instructions promptly, don't you? At Durmstrang, Valeria replied coolly, our defense classes involve actual defensive magic, Professor. A hush fell over the classroom. Umbridge's smile tightened. Well, you're at Hogwarts now, dear, and here we follow the ministry-approved curriculum. Wand away, book open. Valeria stared at Umbridge for a long moment before slowly putting her wand in her pocket and opening the textbook. Harry couldn't help but admire her nerve. Chapter 2, Umbridge said, as if nothing had happened. Basic defensive theories and their derivation. As they began reading, Harry felt something nudge his elbow. A folded piece of parchment. He glanced at Valeria, who was seemingly absorbed in her book. He carefully unfolded the note beneath his desk. Do all your professors forbid practical magic, or just this one? Harry scribbled back, just Umbridge. Ministry stooge. They don't want us trained. He passed the note back, watching as she read it. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and she wrote a response. Interesting. At Durmstrang, this would never happen. Perhaps we could discuss this further, elsewhere. Harry felt a strange flutter in his stomach. He wrote, when? Her response came quickly, after dinner. Library? Harry hesitated, then wrote, I have detention with Umbridge. Later? Valeria frowned at that, then wrote, what time? 9 p.m. usually. I'll find you after. The rest of the class dragged by. Harry was acutely aware of Valeria beside him, her quill occasionally scratching notes that definitely weren't about Slinkard's defensive theories. Once, their eyes met briefly, and she gave him a conspiratorial smile that made his heart race. When class ended, Valeria gathered her things efficiently. Potter, she said quietly. Until later. She swept out of the room with her Durmstrang classmates, leaving Harry staring after her. What was that about? Ron asked, coming up beside him. Nothing, Harry said, too quickly. She passed you notes all class, Hermione said, frowning. What did she want? Just asked about Umbridge, Harry replied, which was mostly true. Be careful, Harry, Hermione warned. We don't know anything about these Durmstrang students. And that girl's father is deputy headmaster. Hermione, you're the one who just said we should give them a chance, Harry pointed out. Yes, but, come on, Harry interrupted. We'll be late for potions. Hermione cornered Harry at lunch, while Ron was distracted by a debate about Quidditch with Dean and Seamus. I've been doing some research on the Volkovs, she said without preamble. Harry suppressed a sigh. Go on then. They're an old Russian wizarding family, powerful and connected. Gregory Volkov, that's the father, was rumored to have connections with Grindelwald in his youth, though nothing was ever proven. Wasn't everyone at Durmstrang connected to Grindelwald? Harry asked, stabbing a potato with his fork. This was more direct, Hermione said. And there are rumors about their family specializing in certain types of dark magic. What types? Hermione glanced around and lowered her voice. Soul magic. Harry raised his eyebrows. What, like Voldemort's kind of magic? Not exactly, but, adjacent. Magic involving the mind, memories, emotions. She hesitated. Some books mention shadow magic, but I couldn't find much detail on what that actually means. Harry considered this. So you think she's dangerous? I think we should be cautious, Hermione said carefully. The timing of this exchange, with everything that's happening. I get it, Harry said, though part of him was more intrigued than concerned. His eyes drifted to the Slytherin table, where the Durmstrang students were sitting. Valeria was engaged in conversation with Malfoy, who looked smugly pleased with himself. As if sensing Harry's gaze, she looked up suddenly. Their eyes met across the great hall, and she gave him a subtle nod before returning to her conversation. She's sitting with Malfoy, Harry noted. Durmstrang and Slytherin have always had affinities, Hermione said. Harry thought of Viktor Krum, who had been nothing like the Slytherins. Not necessarily. Just be careful, Harry, Hermione repeated. That's all I'm saying. After lunch, Harry was heading to Charms when he heard raised voices around the corner. He recognized Malfoy's drawling tone immediately. Can't believe they'd let filthy mudbloods into Durmstrang now. Your school used to have standards. Harry peered around the corner. Malfoy, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle as usual, was facing Valeria in the otherwise empty corridor. Her posture was rigid, but her expression remained calm. You misunderstand Durmstrang, Draco, she said coolly. We don't reject students based on birth. We reject them based on weakness. Magical lineage means nothing if you can't back it up with skill. Malfoy sneered. So you're a blood traitor too? My father said the Volkovs were one of the few decent families left. My family prizes power and ability above all, Valeria replied, her voice hardening. A concept your father might remember, if he weren't so busy groveling at the feet of an egomaniac. Malfoy's pale face flushed red. How dare you? Your father chose his path, Valeria cut him off. As we all must. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a class to attend. She moved to walk past him, but Malfoy grabbed her arm. Harry instinctively reached for his wand. Nobody talks about my father like that, Malfoy hissed. In a flash too quick for Harry to follow, Valeria had her wand at Malfoy's throat. She hadn't shouted a spell, but dark shadows seemed to swirl around the tip of her wand. "Remove your hand," she said softly, "or lose it." Even from a distance, Harry could see the fear in Malfoy's eyes. He released her arm and stepped back. "You'll regret this," he spat. "I doubt that," Valeria replied. The shadows around her wand dissipated. "Good day, gentlemen." She turned and walked away, her red robe swishing behind her. Harry pressed himself against the wall as she approached, but she spotted him immediately. "Eavesdropping, Potter?" she asked, but her tone wasn't accusatory. "I heard Malfoy," Harry explained. "He's a git to everyone, but especially foreigners." "I can handle Draco Malfoy," she said with a slight smirk. "Though your concern is noted." "What was that spell?" Harry asked. "With the shadows?" Something flickered in her eyes. "Not a spell exactly. Just a manifestation of intent. I've never seen magic like that." "There's a lot of magic they don't teach at Hogwarts," she said, stepping closer. "Magic that could be useful, especially now." Harry felt his heart rate quicken. "What do you mean, especially now?" Her blue eyes studied him intently. "You know exactly what I mean, Potter. Your ministry may deny it, and your school may avoid preparing you, but war is coming. And you're at the center of it." Harry stared at her. No one spoke to him this directly anymore, not even his friends. We'll talk tonight," she interrupted. "After your detention." She glanced at his hand, and her eyes narrowed. "What's she doing to you?" Harry instinctively hid his hand. "Nothing." Valeria reached out and gently took his hand, turning it over. The words, "I must not tell lies," were clearly visible, raw and red against his skin. "A blood quill," she said, her voice hardening. "Those are restricted artifacts." "Yeah, well, Umbridge doesn't care much about restrictions," Harry said, pulling his hand back. "Does Dumbledore know?" Harry shrugged. "Dumbledore's got bigger problems than my detentions." Valeria's expression was unreadable. "I see. Well, perhaps we have more to discuss than I thought." She glanced down the corridor. "I'm late for Transfiguration." "Until tonight, Potter." As she walked away, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just shifted, though he couldn't say exactly what. Detention with Umbridge was as awful as ever. By the time Harry left her office at 9:30, his hand was throbbing painfully, blood seeping through the handkerchief he'd wrapped around it. "Took you long enough." Harry jumped, turning to find Valeria leaning against the wall opposite Umbridge's office. She had changed out of her Durmstrang uniform into black trousers and a dark grey jumper. "Sorry," he said automatically. Umbridge was being thorough. Valeria pushed off the wall and approached him. "Let me see." Without waiting for permission, she took his injured hand and unwrapped the handkerchief. Her touch was surprisingly gentle. "This is barbaric," she said quietly. "And you let her do this to you?" Harry bristled. "I don't let her. She's got the ministry behind her. What am I supposed to do?" "Fight back," Valeria said simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I can't just, not directly," she clarified. "There are other ways to fight." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver tin. "Here." She opened it to reveal a greenish salve that smelled of mint and something sharper, almost metallic. "What's that?" Harry asked suspiciously. "A healing salve. We use it at Durmstrang when training gets intense." She scooped some onto her fingers. "It won't heal it completely, blood quill damage needs time, but it will ease the pain and prevent infection." Harry hesitated, then nodded. Valeria gently applied the salve to his wounded hand. It stung for a moment, then a pleasant cooling sensation spread across his skin. The relief was immediate. "Thanks," Harry said, genuinely grateful. "You're welcome." She recapped the tin and handed it to him. "Keep it. You'll need it again tomorrow, I imagine." Harry pocketed the tin. "So, you wanted to talk?" Valeria glanced around the corridor. "Not here. Too many ears in these walls." "Room of requirement?" Harry suggested without thinking. "The what?" "It's a secret room. Changes based on what you need. Few people know about it." Valeria's eyes lit up with interest. "Show me." They made their way to the 7th floor, Harry checking the Marauder's map occasionally to avoid prefects or professors. Valeria watched him curiously but didn't ask about the map. When they reached the blank wall opposite the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy, Harry paced back and forth 3 times, thinking, "We need a place to talk privately, somewhere comfortable where we won't be overheard." A door materialized in the stone wall. Valeria's eyes widened slightly, the first time Harry had seen her genuinely surprised. "Impressive," she murmured. Inside, the room had provided a cozy space with 2 comfortable armchairs facing each other beside a small fireplace. A window showed the night sky, though Harry knew it must be an illusion since they were in the middle of the castle. Valeria walked around the room, examining it with open curiosity. "Hogwarts has more secrets than I expected. You don't have rooms like this at Durmstrang?" Harry asked, taking one of the chairs. "We have different kinds of secrets," she replied, settling into the chair opposite him. "Darker ones, generally." "Is that why you wanted to talk?" Harry asked directly. "To compare school secrets?" Valeria studied him for a moment. "No, Potter. I wanted to talk because you intrigue me." "Me?" Harry couldn't keep the surprise from his voice. "You," she confirmed. "The boy who lived. The one who supposedly defeated the Dark Lord as an infant, only to claim his return last year, a claim your own ministry refuses to acknowledge." Her blue eyes were intense in the firelight. "A boy who endures torture rather than recant what he knows to be true." Harry shifted uncomfortably. "If you've come to decide if I'm crazy or lying, I know you're neither," she interrupted. "The Dark Lord has returned. My father has sources. We know the truth." Harry stared at her. "Then why am I here? Why am I talking to you?" She leaned forward. "Because Durmstrang teaches us to recognize power, Potter. And you have it. Raw, untapped, but undeniable. Don't," she said sharply. "Don't diminish yourself. It's unbecoming and inaccurate." She sat back. "You faced the Dark Lord multiple times and survived. That's not luck. That's power." Harry didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to him this way before. "What do you want from me?" he finally asked. "An exchange," she said simply. "Knowledge for knowledge. I can teach you magic that Hogwarts, especially under ministry control, will never offer. Magic that could help you survive what's coming. And what do you get?" A smile played at her lips. "The opportunity to work with a wizard of unusual potential. And perhaps, insights into the Dark Lord that could be valuable to my family." Harry frowned. "Your family? Are they supporters of Voldemort?" To her credit, Valeria didn't flinch at the name. "No. The Volkovs serve no one. But we do believe in being well informed about potential threats. And Voldemort is a threat to your family?" "Voldemort is a threat to everyone, Potter. Even those who think themselves his allies." She tilted her head. "So? Are you interested in my offer?" Harry hesitated. Part of him was screaming that this was exactly the sort of situation Hermione had warned him about. But another part, the part tired of being unprepared, tired of being kept in the dark, was intrigued. "What kind of magic?" he asked cautiously. Valeria smiled, as if she'd already won. "Combat magic, primarily. Spells to disable opponents quickly. Defensive techniques beyond basic shields. Methods to resist mental intrusion." "You mean occlumency?" She looked surprised. "You know of occlumency?" "I've heard of it," Harry admitted. "Never learned it though." "I could teach you the basics," she offered. "It's essential for anyone facing skilled dark wizards." Harry thought of his dreams, the glimpses into Voldemort's mind. "That might be useful. I can also show you some of what we just call shadow magic," she continued. "It's not dark magic in the way your ministry defines it, but it's adjacent. Magic that works with darkness itself, with shadows and night." "What can it do?" "Concealment. Movement through shadows. Dampening magical signatures to avoid detection." She demonstrated by holding out her hand. The shadows in the room seemed to deepen and gather around her fingers, swirling like liquid darkness. "It's particularly useful for someone who tends to find himself in dangerous situations." Harry watched, fascinated. "And in return? What exactly do you want to know about Voldemort?" "Your encounters with him. What you observed of his magic, his weaknesses, his methods." She let the shadows dissipate. "Knowledge is power, Potter. And against someone like the Dark Lord, we need all the power we can get." It wasn't an unreasonable request. Harry had told Dumbledore everything anyway. "When would we do this? Where?" "Here seems ideal," Valeria said, glancing around the room. "As for when, I understand you're starting some sort of defense group." Harry stiffened. "How did you know about that?" "People talk," she said vaguely. "And rebellion against tyranny is hardly subtle, even when attempted by teenagers." "It's not rebellion," Harry protested. "It's practical defense, since Umbridge won't teach us anything useful." "Call it what you like," Valeria said with a shrug. "I want in. My fellow Durmstrang students as well." "I don't know, we have skills your Hogwarts students don't," she pointed out. "And perspectives that could be valuable. Plus, it would provide cover for our own sessions." She leaned forward. "After your group meetings, you and I could continue with more advanced material." It made sense, and Harry couldn't deny that having experienced duelists in the DA would be helpful. But something still felt off. "Why me?" he asked bluntly. "You could approach any student here. Why offer to help me specifically?" Valeria's expression softened slightly. "I told you. I recognize power and potential when I see it." She hesitated, then added, "And perhaps I understand what it's like to have expectations placed on you that you never asked for." For some reason, that made Harry trust her more than anything else she'd said. "All right," he decided. "You and your friends can join the DA, and we can do extra sessions after." Valeria smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. "Excellent. I think this will be beneficial for both of us." As they left the room of requirement and headed back to their respective dormitories, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made a deal that would change everything. Whether for better or worse remained to be seen. The next few days passed in a blur. Harry's detention with Umbridge finally ended, though his hands still bore the faint scars of, "I must not tell lies." The DA had its first meeting, with the Durmstrang students joining as promised. To Harry's surprise, they integrated well, showing Hogwarts students defensive spells that weren't in their curriculum. Valeria proved to be an exceptional duelist, even demonstrating techniques that impressed Hermione. After the session, she pulled Harry aside. "Tonight," she said quietly. "Midnight. Same place." Harry nodded, ignoring Hermione's suspicious glance. When he returned to the room of requirement that night, he found it transformed. Instead of the large, open space they'd used for the DA, it was now a smaller room with cushioned floors, bookshelves, and what looked like training dummies in one corner. Valeria was already there, sitting cross-legged in the center of the room, her eyes closed. She was wearing black training clothes, her dark hair pulled back in a tight braid. "You're late," she said without opening her eyes. "Sorry," Harry said. Filch was patrolling. She opened her eyes. "First lesson, moving unseen. Sit." Harry sat across from her, mimicking her cross-legged position. "Clear your mind," she instructed. "Close your eyes and focus on your breathing." Harry tried, but his thoughts kept intruding, worries about Umbridge, confusion about Dumbledore, the pressure of OWLS, the constant fear of Voldemort's next move. "You're thinking too much," Valeria said. "I can practically hear it." "Sorry," Harry muttered. "Not great at clearing my mind." "Then don't clear it. Direct it." Her voice softened slightly. "Imagine your thoughts as clouds passing overhead. Acknowledge them, then let them drift away." Harry tried again, visualizing his worries as clouds. It helped a little. "Better," Valeria said. "Now, feel the shadows in the room. Every dark corner, every place light doesn't touch. Feel them as extensions of yourself." Harry concentrated, trying to sense the darkness around them. At first, he felt nothing. Then, gradually, he became aware of a subtle presence, cool, fluid, waiting. "I feel something," he admitted. "Good. That's the first step." She stood in one fluid motion. "Now watch." Valeria moved to the center of the room where the light was brightest. She closed her eyes, raised her hands, and the shadows from the corners of the room seemed to respond, stretching toward her like living things. They wrapped around her, not obscuring her completely but making her seem less substantial, her edges blurring. "This is basic shadow concealment," she explained, her voice slightly muffled. "Not invisibility, but it makes you harder to notice, especially in low light." She released the shadows, which retreated to their corners. "How do you do that?" Harry asked, fascinated. "Intent and connection," she replied. "Shadow magic isn't about control, it's about partnership. The darkness responds to those who respect and understand it." "Is it dark magic?" "Not in the way you mean," she said. "It's neutral, like fire. It can warm or it can burn, depending on how you use it." For the next hour, she guided Harry through basic exercises, feeling the shadows, calling them, letting them respond to his presence. By the end, he could make the darkness deepen around his hand, though nowhere near as dramatically as Valeria could. "Not bad for a first attempt," she said. "You have an affinity for it." "Really?" Harry couldn't keep the surprise from his voice. "You've faced darkness," she said simply. "It recognizes you." Before they ended the session, Valeria showed him a simple occlumency technique, creating a mental room where he could store thoughts he wanted to protect. "Practice this every night before sleep," she instructed. "It's the foundation of mental defense." As they prepared to leave, Harry remembered their bargain. "You wanted to know about Voldemort," he said. Valeria nodded. "But not tonight. We've done enough." She hesitated, then added, "Besides, I'd rather hear about Harry Potter first." "What do you mean?" "Not the boy who lived. Not the Triwizard Champion. Just Harry." She smiled slightly. "Next time, we'll talk properly." For some reason, that prospect made Harry's heart race more than shadow magic ever could. The next morning at breakfast, Ron nudged Harry sharply. "Mate, Durmstrang girl's staring at you again." Harry glanced up to see Valeria at the Slytherin table. Unlike the other Durmstrang students, who were engaged in conversation, she was watching him with that same intense focus he'd come to recognize. When their eyes met, she gave him a slight nod. "What's going on with you two?" Hermione asked suspiciously. "And don't say nothing again." Harry sighed. "She's just, helping me with some advanced defense stuff. What kind of stuff? Hermione pressed. Just different techniques, Harry said vaguely. Things they learn at Durmstrang. Dark magic, you mean, Hermione said flatly. Not dark, Harry corrected. Just different. Hermione looked unconvinced. Harry, be careful. The Volkovs have a complicated history, I know, Harry interrupted. You told me. But so does everyone. Sirius's family was as dark as they come, but he's not. That's different, Hermione insisted. Is it? Harry challenged. You were the one who said we should give the Durmstrang students a chance. But the moment one of them takes an interest in me, you're suspicious. Because I care about you, Hermione said earnestly. And because the timing is suspicious. Right when the Ministry's infiltrating Hogwarts and Voldemort's gathering followers, suddenly a witch from a family with dark connections wants to teach you special magic. Put that way, it did sound suspicious. But Harry had spent time with Valeria, felt her magic, seen her genuine interest in helping him. I appreciate the concern, he said more gently. But I can handle this. Before Hermione could respond, the morning mail arrived. A sleek black raven swooped down toward Harry, landing gracefully beside his plate. It carried a small scroll tied with red ribbon. Whose raven is that? Ron asked, staring at the imposing bird. Harry untied the scroll. The raven immediately took flight, not waiting for a response. Harry unrolled the parchment to find elegant handwriting, tonight. Same time, same place. Wear something you don't mind getting damaged. Harry quickly pocketed the note, but not before Hermione caught a glimpse. She questioned. Valeria? Just DA stuff, Harry lied. The look on Hermione's face said she didn't believe him for a second, but thankfully she dropped it, for now. That afternoon, Harry was heading to the library to meet Ron and Hermione when someone grabbed his arm and pulled him into an alcove. He reached for his wand instinctively. Easy, Potter, Valeria said, releasing his arm. Just me. You could just say hello like a normal person, Harry grumbled, his heart racing from the surprise. Where's the fun in that? She asked with a slight smirk. Besides, I wanted to warn you. Malfoy's planning something. Harry frowned. What do you mean? I overheard him talking with his cronies in the Slytherin common room, she explained. Something about catching you breaking rules and getting you banned from Quidditch. How would you know what happens in the Slytherin common room? The Durmstrang students were sorted into houses for administrative purposes, she said. I was placed in Slytherin, though I don't sleep in their dormitories. Of course you were, Harry muttered. Is that a problem? Valeria challenged, stepping closer. Do you think all Slytherins are evil? No, Harry said quickly. It's just, not surprising, that's all. She studied him for a moment. You know, at Durmstrang, we don't divide students into houses based on personality traits. It seems limiting. Maybe, Harry conceded. But the hat put me in Gryffindor for a reason. Did it? Valeria raised an eyebrow. Or did you end up there because that's where you believed you belonged? Harry hesitated, remembering his sorting, how the hat had wanted to put him in Slytherin, how he had begged for Gryffindor instead. How did you know? He asked quietly. I didn't, she admitted. But it was a reasonable guess. You have qualities of multiple houses, as most people do. The sorting system forces choices where none should be needed. Before Harry could respond, voices echoed from around the corner. Valeria reacted instantly, pulling Harry deeper into the alcove and summoning shadows around them. Harry felt the cool darkness envelop them both as Draco Malfoy and his friends passed by, oblivious to their presence. How did you do that so quickly? Harry whispered once they'd gone. Practice, Valeria replied, releasing the shadows. Something you'll learn tonight. They were standing very close now, her face inches from his in the confined space. Harry suddenly found it hard to concentrate. "I should go," he said awkwardly. "Ron and Hermione are waiting." Of course, Valeria stepped back. "Your friends are protective. They worry," Harry explained. "They should," Valeria said seriously. "But not about me." She touched his arm briefly. "Until tonight, Potter." She slipped out of the alcove and disappeared down the corridor, leaving Harry with far more questions than answers. That night's lesson was more intense than the first. Valeria had configured the room of requirement with obstacles, pillars, barricades, varying levels of light and shadow. "Combat movement," she explained. "Using shadows to reposition during a fight." She demonstrated, disappearing into a patch of darkness and reappearing from another several meters away. It wasn't apparition, more like slipping through the shadows themselves. "That's impossible," Harry said. "You can't apparate in Hogwarts." "It's not apparition," Valeria explained. "It's shadow walking. Different principle entirely. The shadows are all connected on a level most wizards never perceive." For hours, they practiced. Harry couldn't manage anything close to Valeria's fluid movement through darkness, but he did learn to draw shadows around himself for concealment and, in one exciting moment, managed to step into a deep shadow and emerge a foot away. "You're progressing faster than I expected," Valeria said, genuine approval in her voice. Exhausted but exhilarated, Harry collapsed onto a cushion the room provided. Valeria sat beside him, barely winded despite the intense training. "Now," she said, "I believe you owe me a conversation." Harry nodded, catching his breath. "What do you want to know?" "Let's start simple," she suggested. "Your first encounter with the Dark Lord after his return. What happened in that graveyard?" Harry hesitated. He'd told this story to Dumbledore, to Sirius, to Ron and Hermione. But something about Valeria's direct approach made it easier. He described everything: the Triwizard Cup port key, Cedric's death, the ritual that restored Voldemort's body, the duel, Priori Incantatem, his escape. Valeria listened without interrupting, her expression growing more intense as the story progressed. "Priori Incantatem," she repeated when he finished. "Brother wands. That's significant." "Dumbledore explained it," Harry said. "Our wands share cores, feathers from the same phoenix." "It's more than that," Valeria said thoughtfully. "It creates a connection between you. A magical resonance." She looked at him with new interest. "And you fought his Imperius curse off completely?" Harry nodded. "Earlier that year, in defense class. Our teacher, well, it turned out to be Barty Crouch Jr. using Polyjuice. He cast Imperius on all of us. I was the only one who could throw it off." "Remarkable," Valeria murmured. "Most adult wizards can't resist Imperius, let alone 14-year-olds. Harry shrugged, uncomfortable with her admiration. "It's just something I can do." "No, Potter. It's evidence of exceptional magical resistance." She leaned forward. "What about your Patronus? I've heard rumors you can produce a corporeal one." "Since third year," Harry confirmed. "It's a stag." Valeria's eyes widened slightly. "Third year? That shouldn't be possible." "Lupin taught me because of the Dementors," Harry explained. "I had a particular problem with them." "And yet you mastered one of the most difficult defensive charms in existence," she said. "Do you see why I'm interested in you now? Your magical potential is extraordinary." Harry looked away, embarrassed by her directness. "It's not that impressive. Hermione's much better at most spells." "Technical proficiency isn't the same as raw power," Valeria said. "Your friend Granger may excel at textbook magic, but you have something rarer, instinctive magical strength." "If I'm so powerful," Harry said bitterly, "why couldn't I save Cedric? Why can't I convince anyone that Voldemort's back?" Valeria's expression softened. Power isn't omnipotence, Potter. And the world believes what it wants to believe. She hesitated, then added, I believe you, for what it's worth. Thanks, Harry said, and meant it. So, what's your story? Why did you really come to Hogwarts? Officially? To participate in the exchange program, she said with a slight smile. Unofficially? My father wanted eyes inside Hogwarts during this transitional time. You're spying for your father? Harry asked, tensing. Observing, she corrected. The Volkov family has survived centuries of magical conflicts by staying well informed. And what have you observed so far? That Hogwarts is divided. That your ministry is in denial. That Dumbledore is preparing for war while pretending not to. She looked directly at him. And that Harry Potter is at the center of it all, whether he wants to be or not. Harry couldn't argue with that assessment. What about you? He asked. Where do you stand in all this? Valeria was quiet for a moment. I stand where I've always stood. With those who fight for their own power, not borrowed glory. Her blue eyes met his. I think you might be the same, if given the chance. What does that mean? It means, she said carefully, that you've been positioned as a symbol in a war you didn't choose. Dumbledore's champion. The Ministry's scapegoat. Voldemort's nemesis. But who is Harry Potter fighting for? What does Harry Potter want? It was a question no one had ever asked him before, and Harry found he didn't have an immediate answer. I want Voldemort gone, he said finally. I want people to be safe. Noble, Valeria acknowledged. But is that all? What else should I want? Power, she said simply. Not to dominate others, but to control your own destiny. To never be a victim or a pawn again. She leaned closer. Isn't that what you really want, Harry? Freedom. The use of his first name caught him off guard. Something in her words resonated deeply, touching a part of himself he rarely acknowledged, the part that resented being manipulated, positioned, controlled. Maybe, he admitted. But not at any cost. Valeria smiled. Good. That's what separates people like us from people like the Dark Lord. We understand that power has limits. Morality. Purpose. People like us. Harry repeated. Those caught between light and shadow, she said softly. Not dark wizards, but not entirely light either. Walking the edge. It was well past 2 in the morning when they finally left the room of requirement. At the point where they needed to part ways, Harry to Gryffindor Tower, Valeria to the guest quarters, she stopped him. One more thing, Potter, she said, reaching into her pocket. She pressed a small object into his hand, a ring of black metal with subtle runes engraved around its circumference. Wear this. What is it? Harry asked, examining the ring. Protection, she said simply. Against mental intrusion. It's not as effective as Master Declumency, but it will help shield your thoughts while you're learning. I can't accept this, Harry protested. It looks valuable. It's a loan, not a gift, Valeria said firmly. Consider it an investment in our partnership. The word partnership lingered between them. It felt significant, like a threshold crossed. Thank you, Harry said, slipping the ring onto his finger. It adjusted itself automatically to fit perfectly. Don't thank me yet, Valeria replied with a hint of her usual smirk. Wait until you see what I have planned for our next session. As Harry watched her walk away, he realized with a start that he was looking forward to it more than he'd looked forward to anything in a long time. The following week brought changes to Hogwarts. Umbridge had been named High Inquisitor, giving her unprecedented authority over other professors. Educational decrees appeared almost daily, restricting everything from student gatherings to the content of their classes. The DA meetings became a refuge, the one place where students felt they were actually preparing for the real world. The Durmstrang students had integrated fully now, with Valeria often demonstrating advanced techniques alongside Harry. Hermione remained suspicious, especially when she noticed the black ring on Harry's finger. "Where did you get that?" she demanded during a study session in the common room. "It was my father's," Harry lied. "Sirius gave it to me." Hermione clearly didn't believe him but didn't press the issue. The truth was, the ring was proving valuable. Harry's dreams of corridors and doors had diminished, and his scar hurt less frequently. More importantly, his private sessions with Valeria were progressing rapidly. He could now maintain basic shadow concealment for several minutes and had even managed a short shadow walk during their last practice. "You have a natural affinity," Valeria had told him. "Most wizards take months to achieve what you've learned in weeks." There was something exhilarating about learning magic that wasn't taught at Hogwarts, about having this secret connection with someone who saw him not as the boy who lived but as a wizard with untapped potential. But everything changed the night Umbridge discovered the DA. They'd been practicing Patronus charms. Even the Durmstrang students had wanted to learn this light magic that many of them had never attempted. The room was filled with silver animals when the door burst open to reveal Umbridge, Filch, and a group of Slytherins including a smug-looking Draco Malfoy. "Run!" Harry shouted. Chaos erupted. Students fled in all directions as Umbridge and her inquisitorial squad tried to apprehend them. Harry saw Valeria across the room, shadows swirling at her fingertips. Their eyes met, and she nodded once before the darkness enveloped her, making her almost invisible as she slipped toward a side exit. Harry wasn't so lucky. Trying to ensure everyone else escaped, he was among the last to leave, and Malfoy caught him just outside the room of requirement. "Got you, Potter," he crowed triumphantly. As Malfoy dragged him toward Umbridge, Harry caught a glimpse of movement in a darkened corridor, a flash of pale skin and dark hair. Valeria was following, concealed in shadows. "Take him to the headmaster's office," Umbridge ordered, her toad-like face alight with malicious glee. In Dumbledore's office, the situation deteriorated quickly. The headmaster took responsibility for the Dumbledore's Army name on their membership list, claiming he'd been building an army to overthrow the ministry. Before the stunned eyes of everyone present, Dumbledore escaped in a flash of fire with his phoenix, leaving Hogwarts leaderless against the ministry's takeover. Harry was released back to Gryffindor Tower with a week's worth of detentions but no expulsion. As he trudged up the stairs, a hand emerged from the shadows, pulling him into an alcove. "Valeria," he breathed, relieved to see her unharmed. "Did everyone get away?" "Most," she said grimly. "Marietta Edgecombe was caught and seems to have been the informant. The Ravenclaws are handling her situation." Hermione's jinx, Harry realized. The word "sneak" across her face. "Impressive spell work," Valeria acknowledged. "Your friend is formidable." "What happens now?" Harry asked. "Without Dumbledore. Now Hogwarts truly falls under ministry control," Valeria said. "Which makes our work more important than ever." "The DA is finished," Harry pointed out. "The official group, yes." A familiar glint appeared in her blue eyes. "But there's nothing stopping us from continuing, more selectively. A core group, committed to actually preparing for what's coming." "Umbridge will be watching me even more closely now," Harry warned. "All the more reason to perfect your shadow skills," Valeria replied. "Meet me tonight. Midnight. The Astronomy Tower, not the Room of Requirement." "It's too risky now." Harry hesitated. "I don't know if, Potter," she cut him off, gripping his shoulders. "This isn't the time to retreat. This is when it matters most." Her eyes held his. "Trust me." And despite everything, the risk, Hermione's warnings, his own doubts, Harry found that he did. "Midnight," he agreed. The Astronomy Tower was bathed in moonlight when Harry arrived, hidden under his invisibility cloak. Valeria was already there, a dark silhouette against the starlit sky. She turned as he approached, though he hadn't made a sound. "You can sense me?" Harry asked, removing the cloak. The shadows react to your presence, she explained. They ripple when you move through them. It's subtle, but noticeable if you know what to feel for. Harry joined her at the railing, looking out over the grounds of Hogwarts. For a moment, they stood in silence. Dumbledore's gone, Harry finally said, voicing the reality he was still processing. He left us. He protected you, Valeria corrected. By taking responsibility, he prevented your expulsion. But we need him here, Harry insisted. With Voldemort returning, perhaps, Valeria interrupted, this is an opportunity for you to step out of his shadow. Harry looked at her sharply. What do you mean? Dumbledore has guided your path since you arrived at Hogwarts, she said carefully. Sometimes directly, often indirectly. But always with his hand on the tiller. She turned to face him fully. What would Harry Potter do if he were truly making his own choices? It was a provocative question, one that stirred uncomfortable thoughts. I'm not trying to replace Dumbledore, Harry said firmly. I'm not suggesting you should, Valeria replied. I'm suggesting you should find your own path, not follow one laid out for you by others. Before Harry could respond, the door to the tower creaked. They both turned, alert. Someone's coming, Harry whispered, reaching for his invisibility cloak. Valeria shook her head. No time. She grabbed his hand. Trust me. She pulled him into the deepest shadow of the tower. Harry felt the now familiar sensation of darkness enveloping them, but this time it was different, deeper, more complete. The world around them seemed to shift, sounds becoming muffled, light dimming to near darkness. What? Harry began. Shadow Realm, Valeria whispered, her voice sounding strangely hollow. Don't let go of my hand or you'll slip back. They stood perfectly still as Filch entered the tower, lantern held high, Mrs. Norris prowling at his feet. The caretaker searched the space thoroughly, even passing within inches of where they stood, but his eyes slid right past them as if they weren't there. Nobody here, my sweet, he muttered to his cat. Must have been the wind. When Filch finally left, Valeria released her grip on the shadows, and the world snapped back into focus. Harry staggered slightly, disoriented. What was that? He asked, his voice hoarse. A deeper level of shadow magic, Valeria explained. Not just concealment, but partial phasing into the shadow realm itself. It's temporary and draining, but effective. You've never shown me that before, Harry said, a note of accusation in his voice. Because it's dangerous, she admitted. Slip too far into the shadows without proper anchoring, and you might not find your way back. She squeezed his hand, which he realized she was still holding. But I wouldn't let that happen to you. The intensity in her voice made Harry's breath catch. There was something in her eyes he hadn't seen before, not just the usual confidence and determination, but something warmer, more personal. Why are you helping me? He asked quietly. Really? Not the reason you gave before about magical potential. The real reason. Valeria hesitated, then released his hand, turning back to look out over the moonlit grounds. When I was 7, she said slowly, my father took me to see a seer, an ancient witch who lived in the mountains near Durmstrang. He wanted to know my future, my potential. She paused. She told him I would one day stand beside the one who walks between worlds, the marked one who defies death. Harry's hand unconsciously moved to his scar. Me? That was my first thought when I saw you, Valeria admitted. But prophecies are tricky things. Easily misinterpreted. She glanced at him. Still, I was curious. And then I met you, saw your magic, your determination, and I found myself wanting the prophecy to be true. Because you think I'm powerful, Harry said, a hint of bitterness in his voice. Because I think you're worthy, Valeria corrected. Of power, yes, but also of loyalty. Of. She hesitated, friendship. The word seemed inadequate for the complex relationship that had developed between them, but Harry understood what she was trying to say. I'm not sure what happens next, he admitted. With Umbridge in control, Dumbledore gone, the DA disbanded. We adapt, Valeria said firmly. We continue training, but more carefully. We build a smaller, more trusted circle. She turned to face him. And we prepare for the real battle that's coming. Voldemort, Harry said. Yes. But not just him. Her expression grew serious. The Ministry, the Death Eaters, even those who claim to be on the light side but would use you as a weapon rather than help you become your own power. You mean Dumbledore, Harry realized. I mean anyone who sees Harry Potter as a means to an end rather than a wizard in his own right, Valeria said. Including my father, if it comes to that. The declaration stunned Harry. You'd go against your family? I make my own choices, Valeria said simply. As should you. As they stood together in the moonlight, Harry felt something shift between them, a deepening of trust, a recognition of shared purpose. And perhaps something more, something neither was quite ready to name. Same time tomorrow? Harry asked. Valeria smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her usually serious face. I'll be here. As Harry made his way back to Gryffindor Tower under his invisibility cloak, he realized that despite Dumbledore's departure, despite Umbridge's takeover, despite the looming threat of Voldemort, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Not the desperate hope of survival, but the stronger hope of someone who was beginning to believe in his own power, and in the loyalty of the unexpected ally who was helping him discover it. Chapter 2, Shadows and Light. Umbridge didn't waste any time. Within 24 hours of Dumbledore's dramatic exit, she'd installed herself as headmistress, complete with a gaudy golden plaque on the office door. The inquisitorial squad, Malfoy and his Slytherin cronies, patrolled the corridors with newfound authority, docking points from anyone who looked at them sideways. 50 points from Gryffindor, Potter, Malfoy drawled as Harry passed him in the entrance hall. For existing too loudly. Harry kept walking, his jaw clenched. The black ring on his finger felt suddenly warm against his skin, and he took a deep breath, remembering Valeria's instructions about controlling his emotions. Don't let them provoke you, Hermione whispered, hurrying alongside him toward potions. That's exactly what they want. I know, Harry muttered. His hand instinctively went to his pocket, where he kept the enchanted galleon they'd used for DA meetings. Though the official group was finished, he'd been considering Valeria's suggestion about continuing with a smaller circle. Potions was brutal. Without Dumbledore's protection, Snape seemed to feel free to be even more vindictive than usual. Perhaps, Potter, now that your patron has abandoned the school, you might actually attempt to earn your place here through merit rather than celebrity, Snape said silkily, banishing Harry's perfectly adequate strengthening solution with a flick of his wand. 0 marks for today. Harry gripped the edge of his desk, feeling the ring warm again on his finger. The shadows in the corner of the dungeon seemed to deepen and shift toward him, responding to his anger. He forced himself to relax, and the shadows retreated. Control, he reminded himself under his breath. Control was the first lesson Valeria had taught him about shadow magic. Emotions affected shadows, but mastery required discipline. After class, as they climbed the stairs from the dungeons, Ron finally asked the question Harry had been expecting. So what's happening with, he glanced around to check they weren't overheard, the DA. It's over, Harry said simply, but he caught Hermione's suspicious glance. But we're still going to practice, right? Ron pressed. Maybe just us three, like before. Harry hesitated. He hadn't told them about his continued training with Valeria. Partly because he knew Hermione would disapprove, partly because the shadow magic they were practicing felt private somehow. Actually, Harry began cautiously, I've been thinking maybe a small group could still meet. Not everyone, too risky now. That's what I was thinking. Ron said, looking relieved. Just the core group, yeah. Who exactly? Hermione asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. Us three, obviously, Harry said. Maybe Ginny, Neville, Luna. And the Durmstrang students? Hermione asked pointedly. Harry met her gaze steadily. Valeria, at least. She knows magic we don't. I bet she does, Ron muttered, though without the suspicion in Hermione's voice. His tone suggested he was more impressed than concerned. Harry, Hermione said carefully, I know you've been spending time with her. And that ring, it's helping, Harry interrupted. The dreams, my scar, they've been better since I started wearing it. That's exactly what worries me, Hermione said. Magic that affects the mind isn't something to take lightly. It's not affecting my mind, Harry argued. It's protecting it. You've changed since she arrived, Hermione persisted. You're more secretive, you disappear at night. I've changed because I'm finally learning how to actually defend myself, Harry said, frustration creeping into his voice. Something Dumbledore should have been teaching me all along. Ron and Hermione exchanged a look he couldn't quite interpret. Just be careful, mate, Ron said. Not saying the Durmstrang which isn't helping, but, you know. I am being careful, Harry insisted. But I'm also being realistic. Voldemort's back, Dumbledore's gone, the Ministry's against us, we need every advantage we can get. They reached the entrance hall, where students were gathering for lunch. Across the crowd, Harry spotted Valeria talking with her fellow Durmstrang students. As if sensing his gaze, she looked up, her eyes finding his with uncanny precision. A subtle nod passed between them, their prearranged signal confirming their meeting that night. I've got to go, Harry said abruptly, breaking away from his friends. There's something I need to check before charms. He ignored Hermione's knowing look as he hurried away. That night, Harry slipped out of Gryffindor Tower under his invisibility cloak. The corridors were more heavily patrolled now, with both prefects and inquisitorial squad members on the lookout for rule-breakers. Using the Marauder's map, he navigated carefully to the 7th floor. Valeria was already waiting in the shadows near the room of requirement, so deeply concealed that Harry would have walked right past her if she hadn't reached out to touch his arm. You're getting better at that, he said, removing his cloak. And you're getting more perceptive, she replied. A month ago, you wouldn't have seen me at all, even if you were looking directly at me. It was true. His sensitivity to shadows had increased dramatically since they'd begun training. Sometimes he found himself aware of the darkness in a room the way others might notice light or sound, a new sense he was still learning to interpret. Filch is on the 3rd floor, Harry said, checking the map. Malfoy and Parkinson are patrolling near the dungeons. Then we have some time, Valeria said. She paced 3 times in front of the blank wall, and the door to the room of requirement appeared. Inside, the room had transformed into something new, not the open training space they usually used, but a darker, more intimate setting. Candles flickered in wall sconces, casting long shadows across the stone floor. A central circle was marked in silver, surrounded by strange symbols Harry didn't recognize. What's this? He asked, stepping carefully around the edge of the circle. Tonight, we move beyond basic techniques, Valeria said, closing the door behind them. You've mastered shadow concealment and taken your first steps in shadow walking. It's time to try something more advanced. She removed her outer robe, revealing the same fitted black training clothes she always wore for their sessions. Harry had learned to come prepared as well, wearing comfortable clothes that allowed free movement. What are we doing? Harry asked, eyeing the circle with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Shadow projection, Valeria said, kneeling at the edge of the circle. The ability to extend your consciousness through the shadows, to see and hear at a distance. Harry raised his eyebrows. That sounds useful. Extremely, Valeria agreed. Especially in our current situation. Imagine being able to monitor Umbridge's office, or listen to Malfoy's plotting, all without leaving this room. Is it dangerous? Harry asked, remembering her warning about the Shadow Realm. All magic worth learning carries some risk, she replied honestly. But I'll be with you the entire time. She patted the floor beside her. Sit. I'll explain the process. Harry sat cross-legged next to her, their knees almost touching. Shadow projection is different from shadow walking, Valeria explained. Instead of moving your physical body through shadows, you're extending your consciousness while your body remains in place. It requires intense focus and a strong connection to your target location. How do I connect to a place I can't see? Harry asked. Valeria smiled slightly. You need an anchor, something from that location, or a very clear memory of it. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small black feather. This is from Umbridge's office, a feather from one of those ridiculous quills she uses. How did you get that? Shadow walking has its advantages, she said with a hint of smugness. Now, hold this and focus on your memory of her office. Every detail you can recall. Harry took the feather, closing his eyes as he pictured Umbridge's office, the sickening pink walls, the collector plates with mewling kittens, the polished desk where she'd forced him to carve words into his own hand. Good, Valeria's voice came softly. Now, reach for the shadows around us. Feel them as extensions of yourself. Harry had become familiar with this sensation, the cool, fluid darkness that responded to his presence. He let his awareness expand, feeling the shadows in the room swirling gently. Now, Valeria continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper, imagine those shadows extending beyond this room, flowing through the castle like water, seeking the darkness in Umbridge's office. Harry concentrated, trying to visualize the shadows stretching out, flowing under doors and through corridors. It was harder than shadow concealment, more abstract, requiring him to maintain awareness of both his body here and the extending tendrils of darkness. I can't, he said after several minutes of fruitless effort. It's not working. You're trying to force it, Valeria said calmly. Shadow magic isn't about control, it's about partnership, remember? The darkness isn't your servant, it's your ally. She shifted behind him, her chest nearly touching his back, and placed her hands lightly on his shoulders. Close your eyes, she instructed, her voice close to his ear. Breathe with me. Harry felt her chest rise and fall against his back, and he matched his breathing to hers. The proximity was distracting, but also grounding somehow. Now, don't push the shadows outward, she said softly. Instead, feel the connection between all shadows. They're all part of the same darkness, whether here or in Umbridge's office. This approach made more sense to Harry. Rather than trying to extend the darkness like a physical thing, he focused on the idea that all shadows were inherently connected. He felt a subtle shift in his awareness, a sense of the darkness expanding not from him but around him. That's it, Valeria murmured, her breath warm against his neck. Now, focus on the feather. Let it draw your consciousness to its source. Harry concentrated on the small black feather in his palm. Suddenly, he felt a peculiar stretching sensation, as if part of his mind was being gently pulled away from his body. The darkness swirled, and then, he was in Umbridge's office, or rather, his awareness was. He couldn't see in the conventional sense, but he could perceive the room from the perspective of its shadows, under the desk, in the corners, behind the curtains. The sensation was disorienting at first, like trying to piece together a room from fragments of perception. More surprising was that he could hear Umbridge's voice, mid-conversation with someone. Assured the minister that the situation is fully under control, she was saying in her sickly sweet tone. Potter and his little friends have been disbanded, and without Dumbledore's interference, we can finally implement proper educational reforms. And what about the Durmstrang students? The other voice belonged to Cornelius Fudge, Harry realized with a jolt. Karkaroff's still missing, and their ties to dark magic, being monitored closely, Umbridge assured him. The Volkov girl in particular. She seems to have taken an interest in Potter. That's concerning, Fudge said. The Volkovs have always been unpredictable. Political chameleons. You don't think they're aligning with Dumbledore, do you? I think they're positioning themselves to benefit regardless of outcome, Umbridge replied. But I've instructed the Inquisitorial Squad to keep a close eye on their interactions with Potter. If they're plotting something, the connection wavered as Harry's concentration slipped. The shadows in Umbridge's office seemed to pulse and fade. Steady, Valeria's voice came from far away, her hands tightening slightly on his shoulders. Don't lose focus. Harry tried to stabilize the connection, but the effort was draining him quickly. The shadows in Umbridge's office flickered once more, and then he was fully back in the room of requirement, gasping slightly as if he'd been running. What happened? Valeria asked, moving around to face him. I heard them, Harry said, still processing what he'd witnessed. Umbridge and Fudge. They were talking about us, about you specifically. He quickly recounted the conversation. Valeria's expression remained neutral, but he saw a flash of something, concern, perhaps, in her eyes. So they're watching us, she said thoughtfully. Not surprising, but good to know. They mentioned your father, Harry said. Called your family, political chameleons. A slight smile curved Valeria's lips. An apt description. The Volkovs have survived by adapting to shifting political winds for centuries. Is that why you're here? Harry asked directly. To position your family for whatever happens next. Something changed in Valeria's expression, a subtle softening that Harry had rarely seen. That was my father's intention in sending me, she admitted. But my reasons for staying have evolved. Evolved how? Harry pressed. Valeria held his gaze for a long moment, then looked away. You did well for a first attempt at projection, she said, changing the subject. Most can't maintain the connection at all initially. Harry recognized the deflection but decided not to push, for now. It was strange, not like seeing normally. More like, sensing the room through its dark spaces. Exactly, Valeria nodded. With practice, your perception will become clearer. Eventually, you'll be able to project your consciousness through any shadow, anywhere you've been before. Could this work for seeing what Voldemort is doing? Harry asked suddenly. Through my scar connection. Valeria's expression grew serious. That's different. Your connection to the Dark Lord isn't through shadows but through whatever magic linked you when you were a baby. She touched his forehead lightly, just beside his scar. But understanding shadow projection might help you better control those visions when they come. They continued practicing for another hour. By the end, Harry could maintain the projection to Umbridge's office for nearly 5 minutes before exhaustion forced him back. Valeria seemed impressed with his progress, though she tried to hide it behind her usual cool demeanor. As they prepared to leave, taking care to check the Marauders' map for patrolling teachers, Valeria placed a hand on Harry's arm. Saturday is the Hogsmeade weekend, she said. Are you going? I was planning to, Harry replied. Need to get out of the castle, even for a few hours. Good. Meet me at the Three Broomsticks at noon, she said. There's someone I want you to meet. Who? Harry asked, immediately suspicious. Someone who might have useful information, Valeria said vaguely. About the dark magic Voldemort used to return. Harry's interest was piqued despite his caution. I'll be there. Valeria nodded, then surprised him by leaning in and brushing her lips against his cheek. Until then, Potter. Before he could respond, she stepped into a deep shadow by the door and disappeared, leaving Harry staring at the empty space with his heart racing. You're meeting her in Hogsmeade? Hermione asked incredulously the next morning at breakfast. Harry, don't you think that's a bit risky with Umbridge watching your every move? It's a public place, Harry pointed out. And it's not like student meetings are banned in Hogsmeade. Not yet, Ron muttered through a mouthful of toast. Who's this someone she wants you to meet? Hermione pressed. She didn't say exactly, Harry admitted. Just that they might have information about the magic Voldemort used to come back. Hermione frowned. That sounds suspicious. It could be a trap. Or it could be useful, Harry countered. Either way, I'm going. We'll come with you, Hermione decided. She said to come alone, Harry said. Of course she did, Hermione rolled her eyes. Harry, please tell me you're not this naive. A Durmstrang student with family connections to dark magic wants you to meet a mysterious stranger who supposedly knows about Voldemort. After Umbridge specifically mentioned monitoring your interactions. Put that way, it did sound questionable. But Harry had spent enough time with Valeria now to trust his own judgment of her. I'll be fine, he insisted. And if it is something dodgy, better I find out now than later. Hermione looked like she wanted to argue further, but at that moment, the morning post arrived. A large raven swooped down toward Harry, Valeria's messenger bird again. It dropped a small, wrapped package beside his plate before flying off. What's that? Ron asked, eyeing the package curiously. Harry unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small silver compass with unusual markings around its edge and a brief note in Valeria's elegant handwriting, for finding your way back from the shadows. Wear it tomorrow. A compass. Hermione leaned over to examine it. Those markings look like ancient runes, but not any I recognize. It's for shadow walking, Harry explained before he could stop himself. For what? Hermione's voice rose slightly. Harry sighed. He might as well tell them now. It's a type of magic Valeria's been teaching me. Using shadows to conceal yourself or move short distances. That sounds like dark magic, Hermione said immediately. It's not, Harry insisted. It's just, different magic. Not taught at Hogwarts. Because it's probably restricted. Hermione hissed. Harry, what exactly have you been doing during these training sessions? Harry hesitated, then decided on honesty. Learning to protect myself in ways Dumbledore never bothered to teach me. Shadow concealment, shadow walking, mental shields. Mental shields? Hermione repeated. You mean occlumency? That's incredibly advanced magic. And incredibly useful against Voldemort, Harry pointed out. My scar's been hurting less. The dreams have decreased. That's the ring, isn't it? Hermione guessed. It's some kind of occlumency aid. Harry nodded reluctantly. Blimey, mate, Ron said, looking impressed despite himself. No wonder you've been distracted lately. You've been learning proper Sirius magic. Is that why you've been able to avoid the Inquisitorial squad so easily? Hermione asked, connecting the dots. You've been hiding in shadows? Sometimes, Harry admitted. Hermione was quiet for a moment, clearly reassessing the situation. Why didn't you tell us? She finally asked, sounding hurt. Because I knew you'd react exactly like this, Harry said. You'd say it was dangerous or forbidden or dark. I'm concerned, yes, Hermione acknowledged. But I'm also, impressed, honestly. This is advanced magic most adult wizards never learn. Really? Harry hadn't expected that response. Really, Hermione confirmed. But Harry, you have to be careful. Magic that affects the mind, that involves shadows and darkness, it can be seductive. I'm being careful, Harry assured her. Valeria's a good teacher. She doesn't push too fast. And her motives? Hermione asked pointedly. Harry fingered the compass, thinking of the gentle kiss on his cheek the night before. I think she genuinely wants to help. And maybe a bit more than that, Ron suggested with a knowing grin. Harry felt his face warm slightly but didn't deny it. The truth was, his feelings for Valeria had grown complicated. What had started as cautious interest had evolved into something deeper, respect, certainly, but also an attraction he found increasingly difficult to ignore. Just, be careful tomorrow, Hermione said, relenting somewhat. And if anything seems off, leave immediately. I will, Harry promised, though he was already determined to meet whoever Valeria's mysterious contact was, regardless of the risk. Saturday arrived bright and clear, ideal weather for the Hogsmeade visit. After enduring Filch's suspicious examination at the castle gates, Harry, Ron, and Hermione made their way down the path to the village. "We'll be at Scrivenshafts if you need us," Hermione said as they reached the main street. "Just send a Patronus if there's any trouble." "I'll be fine," Harry insisted. "It's the Three Broomsticks at noon, not a Death Eater convention." Nevertheless, he appreciated their concern. As his friends headed toward the quill shop, Harry checked his watch, still 30 minutes before he was meant to meet Valeria. He decided to visit Honeyduke's first to stock up on chocolate frogs. The sweet shop was crowded as usual, full of Hogwarts students enjoying their brief escape from Umbridge's educational decrees. As Harry was selecting his purchases, he felt a prickle on the back of his neck, the sensation he'd come to associate with being watched. Turning casually, he scanned the shop. Nothing seemed out of place, but his instincts were seldom wrong these days. He paid for his chocolate and left, keeping his wand accessible in his sleeve. Outside, the street was busy with students and locals. Harry walked toward the Three Broomsticks, still feeling uneasy. The silver compass in his pocket seemed to grow warmer, though that might have been his imagination. He was passing a narrow alley between shops when a hand shot out, grabbing his arm and pulling him into the shadows. He reacted instantly, drawing his wand, only to find himself face to face with Valeria. "Jumpy, Potter?" she asked with a slight smirk. "With good reason," he replied, lowering his wand. "What are you doing?" "We're supposed to meet at the Three Broomsticks." "Change of plans," she said, her expression turning serious. "My contact doesn't want to meet in public after all." "Too many ears." Harry's suspicion immediately flared. "Where, then?" "The Hog's Head," Valeria said. "It's more discreet." Harry had been to the Hog's Head before. It was indeed more private than the Three Broomsticks, but also considerably shadier. "Who exactly are we meeting?" he asked directly. Valeria hesitated, then answered quietly. "A former associate of my father's. Someone who worked with dark artifacts during the First War against Voldemort. He claims to have information about the ritual used for the Dark Lord's rebirth." "And why would he share this with us?" "Because I'm paying him," Valeria said simply. Information is a commodity in certain circles. Harry considered this. It sounded plausible, but Hermione's warnings echoed in his mind. "The compass," he said suddenly, remembering the gift. "You said to wear it today." Valeria nodded. "It's a precaution. If anything goes wrong, it will guide you through the shadows back to Hogwarts." That she had considered an escape route was both reassuring and concerning. "You're expecting trouble." "I expect nothing and prepare for everything," she replied. "That's how one survives in uncertain times." Harry made his decision. "Lead the way." They kept to the less crowded side streets as they made their way toward the Hog's Head. Harry noticed that Valeria seemed more alert than usual, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "Something's wrong," he guessed. "Not wrong," she said quietly. "But not right either. We're being watched." "Umbridge spies?" "Possibly. Or someone else." She glanced at him. "The dark is stirring, Potter. Can't you feel it?" Harry was about to deny it when he realized that he could, in fact, sense something, a heaviness in the shadows that hadn't been there before, as if they were thicker somehow, more substantial. They reached the Hog's Head without incident. The dingy pub was nearly empty, a few cloaked figures hunched over drinks in dark corners, and the barman, who Harry knew was Dumbledore's brother, wiping glasses with a filthy rag. Valeria led him to a table in the back where a wizard waited. He was middle-aged, with a weathered face and a silver streak through his dark hair. His hands were covered in strange scars that seemed to shift and move when Harry looked directly at them. "Karlov," Valeria greeted him coolly. "Miss Volkov," the wizard replied with a slight accent Harry couldn't place. "And Mr. Potter." "An honor." Harry said nothing, assessing the man. He didn't appear threatening, but there was something unsettling about him, a darkness that seemed to cling to him like an aura. "You have information for us?" Valeria prompted, sliding onto the bench opposite him. Harry sat beside her, keeping his wand ready beneath the table. "Direct as your father," Karlov commented with a thin smile. "Yes, I have information, at the agreed price." Valeria reached into her pocket and withdrew a small velvet bag, which she placed on the table between them. "Half now, half when your information proves useful." Karlov opened the bag slightly, then nodded, apparently satisfied with its contents. "Very well. What specifically do you wish to know about the Dark Lord's resurrection ritual?" "Everything," Harry said before Valeria could answer. "How he created the body he has now. What magic he used. How it might be reversed." Karlov's eyebrows rose slightly. "Reversed? Interesting approach, Mr. Potter." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "The ritual used was ancient, predating modern magical classification. It required 3 key components: bone of the father, flesh of the servant, and blood of the enemy." "I know that part," Harry said impatiently. "I was there." "Indeed you were," Karlov said, his eyes flickering to Harry's scar. "But do you understand the significance of your blood in the ritual?" Harry frowned. "Dumbledore said something about Voldemort taking my mother's protection into himself when he took my blood." "Partially correct," Karlov nodded. "But there's more. By using your blood, willingly taken or not, he created a magical link between you. More powerful than the one from your scar." Harry felt a chill. "What kind of link?" "A life tether," Karlov said gravely. "While he lives, you cannot truly die. And while you live, he cannot truly die either," Valeria finished, her expression darkening. "A magical anchor." Harry stared at Karlov, then at Valeria. "That's not possible." "Dumbledore would have told me." "Would he?" Karlov asked softly. "If it meant you were now the tether keeping the Dark Lord bound to this world." Harry's mind raced. Could this be true? Is this why Dumbledore had been avoiding him all year? "How do we break it?" Valeria asked sharply. "This life tether." Karlov spread his scarred hands. "That, I do not know for certain. Such magic is rare and little documented. But I suspect." The door to the pub burst open with a bang. Harry turned to see 4 figures in dark cloaks, their faces obscured by shadow. The few patrons in the pub immediately scattered, diving for cover. "Death Eaters," Valeria hissed, already on her feet, wand drawn. The first spell came without warning, a jet of purple light that shattered the table in front of them. Harry rolled to the side, casting a shield charm that deflected a second curse. "Potter," one of the attackers snarled. "The Dark Lord wants a word." Valeria moved with startling speed, shadows gathering around her wand as she sent a volley of spells toward the Death Eaters. 2 were forced back, but the others advanced, splitting up to come at them from different angles. Harry found himself back to back with Valeria, exchanging spells with the masked attackers. The pub had become a battleground, tables overturned, bottles exploding, magical fire catching on the curtains. "We need to leave," Valeria shouted over the chaos. "There are too many." Harry looked for Karlov, but the informant had vanished in the confusion. "What about your contact?" "Forget him." Valeria deflected a curse that would have hit Harry's head. "The compass, Potter. Use it." Harry pulled the silver compass from his pocket. The needle was spinning wildly, but as soon as he focused on it, it stabilized, pointing toward a particularly dark corner of the pub. "This way," he called, grabbing Valeria's arm and pulling her toward the shadow. A curse hit the floor at their feet, sending splinters of wood flying. Harry felt a sharp pain as one embedded itself in his leg, but he kept moving. They reached the dark corner, backs pressed against the wall as spells continued to fly around them. "Now what?" Harry gasped. "Focus on the shadows," Valeria instructed, her voice calm despite the chaos. Feel them opening, like a doorway. The compass will guide you. Harry concentrated, feeling the darkness respond to his presence. The shadows deepened, thickened, becoming almost tangible. Hold on to me, Valeria said, gripping his hand tightly. And whatever you do, don't let go. With a final look at the compass, Harry stepped backward into the shadow, pulling Valeria with him. The world around them vanished, replaced by a rushing darkness that seemed to pull at them from all directions. He felt Valeria's hand in his, an anchor in the void. The compass glowed silver in his other hand, the needle pointing steadily in one direction. Harry focused on following it, fighting the disorientation of the shadow realm. It felt like swimming through thick liquid, each movement requiring immense effort. Just when he thought he couldn't maintain the focus any longer, they burst out of the darkness, stumbling onto solid ground. Harry gasped for air, his legs giving way beneath him as they collapsed onto a stone floor. "Where are we?" he panted, looking around at the unfamiliar room. "Room of requirement," Valeria answered, sounding equally winded. "You did it, Potter." A full shadow walk over a significant distance. The room had provided them with exactly what they needed, a safe haven with comfortable chairs, medical supplies, and warm light that pushed back the lingering chill of the shadow realm. "Death Eaters," Harry said, still processing what had happened. "In Hogsmeade. How did they know we'd be there?" "I don't know," Valeria admitted, looking troubled. "Either Karlov betrayed us, or we were followed." She examined his leg. "You're injured." Harry looked down to see blood soaking through his jeans where the wood splinter had struck. Now that the adrenaline was fading, the pain was becoming more noticeable. "It's not bad," he said, though he winced as Valeria carefully cut away the fabric to expose the wound. "Deep enough," she observed, reaching for the medical supplies the room had provided. "Hold still." As she worked to clean and bandage his leg, Harry's mind returned to what Karlov had told them before the attack. "Do you think it's true?" he asked quietly. "About the life tether between Voldemort and me?" Valeria's hand stilled for a moment. "It's consistent with what I know of such rituals," she said carefully. "Blood magic is powerful, and what the Dark Lord did was unprecedented. So I'm keeping him alive," Harry said bitterly. "All this time, I've been his anchor to this world." "If it's true," Valeria emphasized, "then he's also yours." "It goes both ways, Harry." It was the first time she'd used his first name, and somehow that made the moment more significant. "We need to break it," Harry said firmly. "Find a way to sever the connection." "We will," Valeria promised, finishing the bandage. Her hand lingered on his leg, a reassuring pressure. "But first, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." Harry nodded, then suddenly remembered. Ron and Hermione. They'll be worried sick when they hear about the attack. "We should find them," Valeria agreed, helping him to his feet. "Can you walk?" Harry tested his weight on the injured leg. It hurt, but it would hold. "Yeah, I'm fine." As they prepared to leave the room of requirement, Valeria caught his arm. "What happened today? It changes things. The Death Eaters attacking so openly, in Hogsmeade of all places. Voldemort is getting bolder. Or more desperate," Harry suggested. "Either way, it means we need to accelerate your training." Her blue eyes were intense, determined. "No more basic exercises. From now on, we focus on combat applications of shadow magic." Harry nodded, equally determined. "Teach me everything." News of the Death Eater attack on Hogsmeade spread through Hogwarts like fiendfire. By dinner time, every student knew that Harry Potter had been targeted, though the details varied wildly with each retelling. "They're saying you fought off a dozen Death Eaters single-handed," Ron informed Harry as they sat in the Gryffindor common room that evening. "And that you disappeared in a cloud of smoke." "Not exactly," Harry said wryly. "There were 4, not a dozen. And Valeria did most of the fighting. You shadow-walked back to Hogwarts, Hermione said, still sounding amazed. Across miles of distance. That's incredibly advanced magic, Harry. After finding his friends and assuring them he was all right, Harry had explained everything, the meeting with Karlov, the attack, and their escape through the shadows. To his surprise, Hermione's skepticism about Valeria seemed to have diminished considerably. She protected you, Hermione acknowledged. And that compass probably saved both your lives. She's been helping all along, Harry pointed out. I told you she wasn't teaching me dark magic. Well, technically shadow magic is classified as grey magic, Hermione corrected, unable to resist being academically precise. But I take your point. The portrait hole opened, and Ginny Weasley climbed through, making a beeline for their corner. Umbridge is on the warpath, she reported breathlessly. She's convinced you orchestrated the whole thing to undermine her authority. That's mental, Ron protested. Why would Harry arrange for Death Eaters to attack him? Since when does Umbridge need logic? Ginny retorted. She's posted new decrees, no students allowed in Hogsmeade without signed permission, all incoming and outgoing mail to be inspected, and an 8 p.m. curfew for all houses. She's turning Hogwarts into a prison, Hermione said grimly. More than that, Harry said, lowering his voice. She's making it impossible for us to prepare for what's coming. The others nodded soberly. The attack had made the threat of Voldemort tangible in a way it hadn't been before. This was no longer theoretical danger, Death Eaters had tried to capture Harry in broad daylight, in a village full of witnesses. What did that bloke tell you? Ron asked. Before the attack, I mean. Harry hesitated, then decided they deserved to know. He explained Karlov's theory about the life tether between him and Voldemort. That's disturbing, Hermione said when he finished. But it actually makes sense. It would explain why your scar connects you to him, why you can see into his mind sometimes. And why Dumbledore's been avoiding you all year, Ron added thoughtfully. If he knew about this. He should have told me, Harry said, unable to keep the bitterness from his voice. Instead of keeping me in the dark, he should have helped me understand what's happening. Maybe he was trying to protect you, Hermione suggested gently. I'm tired of being protected, Harry said firmly. I need to be prepared. They fell silent, the weight of the situation hanging over them. Finally, Ginny spoke up. So what do we do now? Harry exchanged a look with Ron and Hermione. We keep training, he said. Not the full DA, too risky with Umbridge watching so closely. But a core group. Who? Ginny asked. Us, Harry gestured to the four of them. Plus Neville and Luna. And Valeria. To his surprise, no one objected to including the Durmstrang witch. After today, I'd say she's earned it, Ron commented. We'll need somewhere safer than the Room of Requirement, Hermione pointed out. Umbridge knows about that now. Harry thought for a moment. Maybe not somewhere in the castle at all, he said slowly, an idea forming. Sirius mentioned once that there are passages beneath Hogwarts that aren't on any maps, older than the school itself. How would we find them? Ginny asked. Harry fingered the black ring on his hand. I think I know someone who might help with that. That night, Harry met Valeria at their usual spot near the Astronomy Tower. Her expression was grimmer than usual, her posture tense. What is it? Harry asked immediately. News from my father, she said quietly. The attack today wasn't random. The Dark Lord has accelerated his plans. What plans? Valeria glanced around, then drew Harry deeper into the shadows. Not here. Follow me. Instead of heading to the Room of Requirement, she led him down several flights of stairs, past the entrance to the dungeons, to a part of the castle Harry had never visited before. The corridors here were ancient, the stonework cruder than the upper levels. Where are we going? Harry whispered. Somewhere Umbridge doesn't know exists, Valeria replied. The old foundations. They stopped before what appeared to be a solid stone wall. Valeria placed her palm against it and whispered words in a language Harry didn't recognize. The stones rippled like water, revealing a narrow passage beyond. "How did you find this?" Harry asked, amazed. "Shadow walking," Valeria explained as they entered the passage. "When you move through darkness, you discover paths others cannot see." The passage led to a circular chamber with a domed ceiling. Unlike the crude corridor outside, this room was elegant, black marble floors inlaid with silver runes, walls lined with ancient tapestries depicting magical scenes. "What is this place?" Harry breathed, taking in the strange beauty of the chamber. "A ritual room," Valeria said. "Built by the founders, according to my research. Specifically, by Salazar Slytherin and Rowena Ravenclaw, before their falling out." "For what purpose?" "Protection," Valeria replied, moving to the center of the room where a circular pattern was set into the floor. "Hogwarts was built in dangerous times. They created spaces like this to channel powerful magic for the castle's defense." She waved her wand, and torches around the perimeter ignited, casting warm light and long shadows across the chamber. "This is perfect," Harry said, thinking of their need for a new training space. "Umbridge would never find us here." "Precisely," Valeria agreed. "But that's not why I brought you here tonight." She turned to face him, her expression serious. "After what happened today, we need to accelerate your training. And for what I have in mind, we need a proper ritual space." Harry felt a flicker of apprehension. "What exactly are you planning?" "A shadow binding," Valeria said. "A ritual that will deepen your connection to shadow magic, allowing you to access it more fully, more instinctively." "Is it dangerous?" Harry asked, remembering Hermione's warnings about magic affecting the mind. "All meaningful magic carries risk," Valeria acknowledged. "But the greater risk now is leaving you unprepared for what's coming." She reached into her pocket and withdrew a small vial containing a swirling black substance, neither liquid nor gas, but something in between. "Shadow essence," she explained. "Distilled from the deepest darkness of the Black Forest. It will serve as a catalyst for the ritual." Harry eyed the vial warily. "And what exactly will this ritual do to me?" "It will bind the shadows to your magical core," Valeria said. "Not permanently, that would require a much more extensive ritual. But deeply enough that you can call on shadow magic without the lengthy meditation we've been practicing." "Like a shortcut?" "More like an attunement," she corrected. "The shadows already respond to you more readily than to most wizards. This would strengthen that natural affinity." Harry considered this. The ability to use shadow concealment or shadow walking instantly, without preparation, would be invaluable, especially with Death Eaters now openly hunting him. "What do I need to do?" he asked. Relief flickered across Valeria's face. "Stand in the center of the circle," she instructed. "And remove your shirt." Harry raised an eyebrow but complied, stepping into the circular pattern and pulling his shirt over his head. The chamber was cool, raising goosebumps on his skin. Valeria approached with the vial. "This will be cold," she warned, uncorking it. "And it may be uncomfortable. But try not to move once we begin." She dipped her fingers into the shadow essence, which clung to them like living darkness. With careful precision, she began to trace runes onto Harry's chest, shoulders, and back. The substance was beyond cold, it seemed to draw heat from his body wherever it touched, leaving a trail of intense chill that bordered on pain. "What are these symbols?" Harry asked through gritted teeth, trying to distract himself from the discomfort. "Ancient runes of shadow and concealment," Valeria replied, her face close to his as she worked. "They define the parameters of the binding." When she had covered his upper body in the intricate patterns, she stepped back, closing the vial and drawing her wand. The shadow essence on his skin seemed to pulse with each heartbeat, the cold penetrating deeper. "Now, I need you to focus on the shadows around us," Valeria instructed. "Feel them as extensions of yourself, just as we've practiced. Harry closed his eyes, reaching out with his senses to the darkness that filled the corners of the chamber. It felt more responsive than usual, almost eager. "Good," Valeria murmured. She began to move around the circle, speaking in that strange language again. With each word, the runes on Harry's skin grew colder, and the shadows in the room seemed to thicken. Harry felt something building, a pressure in the air, a tension in his magic. The shadows were responding to Valeria's incantation, swirling closer, brushing against him like curious animals. "Embrace them," Valeria's voice came from what seemed like a great distance. "Let them in, Harry." The use of his first name again, it seemed significant, a marker of important moments between them. Harry extended his awareness further, inviting the darkness closer. The shadows surged forward, enveloping him. The cold was overwhelming now, seeping into his very core. He wanted to cry out, to pull away, but remembered Valeria's warning to remain still. Just when he thought he couldn't bear it any longer, something changed. The cold transformed, becoming not warmth exactly, but a familiar coolness, like diving into a lake on a hot day. The shadows weren't foreign anymore, they were extensions of himself, responding to his will as naturally as his own limbs. He opened his eyes to find the room transformed. The shadows had condensed around him, moving like liquid darkness over his skin, merging with the runes Valeria had drawn. As he watched, the shadow essence seemed to sink into his flesh, the runes fading until only faint silver traces remained. Valeria stood before him, her blue eyes wide with something like wonder. "It worked," she said softly. "Better than I expected." Harry looked down at his hands. The shadows in the room seemed to reach toward them, like iron filings drawn to a magnet. "Try to conceal yourself," Valeria suggested. "Not the full meditation, just will it to happen." Harry focused on the desire to be hidden, to blend with the darkness. Instantly, shadows flowed over him, wrapping around his body like a cloak. He could still see and hear normally, but he knew from previous practice that he would be nearly invisible to others. "Perfect," Valeria breathed. "Now release it." With a thought, Harry dismissed the shadows, which reluctantly retreated. "How do you feel?" Valeria asked, stepping closer to examine him. "Different," Harry admitted. "Like I've always had a sense I wasn't using, and now it's awake." Valeria nodded. "That's an apt description. The shadows recognize you now as one of their own." She reached out to touch one of the faint silver marks on his chest. Her fingers were warm against his skin, the contact sending a different kind of shiver through him. "These will fade completely in a day or two," she said, her voice softer than usual. "But the binding will remain active for several weeks before it begins to weaken. By then, your natural affinity should have strengthened enough to compensate." Harry caught her hand as she withdrew it, holding it against his chest. "Thank you," he said simply. Valeria looked startled for a moment, then her expression softened. "You're welcome," she replied, and there was a warmth in her voice he rarely heard. They stood that way for a long moment, connected, the air between them charged with unspoken things. Then Valeria gently reclaimed her hand. "You should rest," she said, her professional demeanor returning. "The ritual takes a toll on your magical reserves. Sleep will help you recover." As they made their way back through the ancient corridors toward the main castle, Harry found himself acutely aware of the shadows around them in a way he never had been before. They seemed alive now, aware of his presence, responding subtly to his passing. "Will it always feel this way?" he asked quietly. "The intensity will fade somewhat," Valeria replied. "But your connection to the shadows will remain stronger than before. You'll learn to filter the awareness, to focus it when needed." At the point where they needed to part ways, Harry to Gryffindor Tower, Valeria to the guest quarters, she hesitated. "Be careful, Harry," she said, genuine concern in her voice. "What happened in Hogsmeade today, it changes things. The Dark Lord is moving more openly now." "All the more reason to be prepared," Harry said firmly. Valeria nodded. Tomorrow, we'll begin combat applications. Meet me in the ritual chamber after dinner. As she turned to go, Harry impulsively reached out, catching her arm. Valeria. She looked back, a question in her eyes. Earlier, you said your reasons for staying at Hogwarts had evolved, he reminded her. What did you mean? Something flickered in her expression, vulnerability, perhaps, or uncertainty. It was so unlike her usual confidence that Harry was momentarily taken aback. I came to observe, she said quietly. To position my family advantageously, as my father instructed. To assess the famous Harry Potter. And now? Harry pressed. Now. She seemed to struggle with the words. Now I find myself concerned with more than political positioning. With your survival. Your success. It wasn't quite a confession of feelings, but from Valeria, it was significant. Harry felt something warm unfurl in his chest. Good night, Potter, she said, reverting to his surname as if to restore some distance between them. Good night, Valeria, he replied, deliberately using her first name. As she walked away, disappearing into the shadows with practiced ease, Harry found himself smiling despite the day's danger and the uncertain future ahead. Something had shifted between them, a connection deepening beyond teacher and student, beyond allies of convenience. What exactly it was becoming, he wasn't yet sure. But like the shadows now responding to his call, it felt natural, inevitable, and strangely right. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Harry assembled the core group as planned, Ron, Hermione, Ginny, Neville, Luna, and Valeria, and they began meeting in the ritual chamber, which they dubbed the Founder's Circle. 3 times a week, they practiced offensive magic far beyond the Hogwarts curriculum, with both Harry and Valeria taking turns leading sessions. To Harry's surprise, the others accepted Valeria readily, especially after she taught them all a simplified version of shadow concealment that helped them avoid the inquisitorial squad's increasingly aggressive patrols. Hermione, in particular, had moved from suspicion to reluctant respect, especially when Valeria shared rare magical texts from Durmstrang's private collection. These contain theories about magical core development that I've never seen referenced in any Hogwarts books, Hermione commented excitedly after one session, poring over a leather-bound tome Valeria had provided. Durmstrang's approach to magical education is more comprehensive, Valeria explained diplomatically. You mean they don't arbitrarily classify magic as dark based on ministry politics, Hermione translated shrewdly. Valeria smiled slightly. Precisely. Even Ron had warmed to her, especially after she helped him develop a modified shield charm that could deflect physical objects as well as spells, useful for both dueling and Quidditch. Harry's own training with Valeria continued separately, focusing on advanced applications of shadow magic. The ritual had indeed transformed his connection to the shadows, he could now call on them instinctively, without meditation or preparation. Shadow walking, which had been exhausting before, now came almost naturally, though it still drained his energy over long distances. More significantly, Valeria had begun teaching him shadow casting, the ability to form shadows into semi-solid constructs that could interact with the physical world. So far, he could only manage simple forms, shields, barriers, brief restraints, but Valeria assured him that with practice, the applications were limited only by his imagination and magical strength. Throughout it all, their relationship continued to evolve. The professional distance Valeria had initially maintained gradually dissolved, replaced by a comfortable camaraderie that occasionally hinted at something deeper. Small touches lingered longer than necessary, their eyes met with increasing frequency, conversations extended beyond magic into personal territories. Harry found himself sharing things he rarely discussed with anyone, his frustration with Dumbledore's absence, his fears about the connection to Voldemort, even stories about his childhood with the Dursleys. Valeria, in turn, revealed glimpses of her own life, the pressure of being the Volkov heir, her complex relationship with her father's political maneuvering, her private doubts about Durmstrang's philosophical approach to magic. Balance is essential, she told him one evening as they sat in the ritual chamber after the others had left. Durmstrang emphasizes power too heavily, often at the expense of wisdom. Hogwarts errs in the opposite direction, restricting access to certain magics out of fear rather than reason. Where's the balance, then? Harry asked. Between power and wisdom? Valeria considered the question seriously. In choice, she finally said. In understanding the full spectrum of magic and choosing your path with open eyes. It was this thoughtfulness, this depth beneath her confident exterior, that drew Harry to her as much as her magical skill or physical beauty. She challenged him to think beyond the simplistic good versus evil narrative that had dominated his magical education thus far. And yet, as May approached, a new tension entered their interactions. Valeria began receiving more frequent communications from her father, black ravens arriving at odd hours, bearing sealed messages that she never discussed. After reading them, she often seemed preoccupied, distant. Is everything all right? Harry finally asked after a particularly intense training session where her focus had clearly been elsewhere. Valeria hesitated, a rare sign of uncertainty. My father is concerned about developments in the wider magical community. Voldemort? Harry guessed. And other factions, she said carefully. The magical world is fracturing, Harry. Lines are being drawn. Neutrality is becoming impossible. And where do the Volkovs stand? Harry asked directly. Valeria met his eyes. That's what my father is trying to determine. And what he expects me to advise him on. The implication was clear, her assessment of Harry, of Dumbledore, of Hogwarts would influence her family's allegiance in the coming conflict. And what will you tell him? Harry asked quietly. Valeria didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was softer than usual. That's becoming more complicated than I anticipated. Before Harry could press further, she changed the subject, returning to the shadow casting technique they'd been practicing. But the question lingered between them, unresolved. The next day brought news that heightened everyone's anxiety. The Daily Prophet reported a mass breakout from Azkaban, 10 high-security prisoners, all Death Eaters, including Bellatrix Lestrange, had escaped in the night. The Ministry blamed Sirius Black, a claim so ridiculous that even students who had doubted Harry's warnings about Voldemort began to question the official narrative. It's starting, Hermione said grimly over breakfast, reading the article. The war. Harry felt a strange calm despite the ominous news. The shadow binding had changed more than just his magical abilities, it had given him a centered confidence he'd never experienced before. The constant emotional turbulence that had characterized his previous years seemed muted now, replaced by a cooler, more focused determination. We knew this was coming, he said simply. Now we prepare for what's next. Across the great hall, he caught Valeria's eye. She gave him a subtle nod, a silent acknowledgement of the shifting landscape. They had planned to meet that evening to continue his training in shadow casting, but Harry sensed that conversation would now take precedence over practice. Throughout the day, the castle buzzed with nervous energy. Umbridge issued another educational decree, this one forbidding students from reading newspapers or magazines not approved by the High Inquisitor, a transparent attempt to control information about the breakout. Harry's last class of the day was potions, where Snape was in a particularly foul mood. As the students filed out after the lesson, Snape called Harry back. A moment, Potter. Harry approached the professor's desk warily. His relationship with Snape remained as antagonistic as ever. Yes, Professor. Snape studied him with those cold black eyes, something like calculation in his expression. Your association with Miss Volkov has not gone unnoticed. Harry tensed. We're friends. Friends, Snape repeated, the word dripping with skepticism. The Volkovs do not make friends, Potter. They make alliances. Is there a point to this, Professor? Harry asked, struggling to keep his tone respectful. The point, Snape said silkily, is that you are dabbling in magics beyond your understanding, with consequences you cannot foresee. Harry felt a chill. I don't know what you're talking about. don't you? Snape's eyes flickered to Harry's chest, where the faint silver marks from the shadow binding had only recently faded completely. Shadow magic leaves traces, Potter. Visible to those who know what to look for. Harry said nothing, unwilling to confirm or deny. The shadows answer readily to those who call, Snape continued, his voice lowering. But they have their price. Always. Is that a warning, Professor? Harry asked quietly. Take it as you will, Snape replied. But remember, not all who appear to stand in the light truly do so, and not all who work with darkness serve the Dark Lord. With that cryptic statement, Snape dismissed him. Harry left the dungeon classroom with his mind racing, unsure what to make of the conversation. Was Snape warning him about Valeria, or something else entirely? When he arrived at the ritual chamber that evening, he found Valeria already there, pacing the circular pattern on the floor. She looked up sharply as he entered. You're late, she observed, though without her usual critical tone. Snape kept me after class, Harry explained, setting down his bag. He knows about the shadow magic. About us training together. Valeria didn't seem surprised. Severus Snape has extensive knowledge of obscure magical disciplines. It's not shocking that he would recognize the signs. He said shadow magic has a price, Harry pressed. What did he mean? Valeria sighed, ceasing her pacing to face him directly. All magic has a cost, Harry. The more powerful, the higher the price. And what's the price of shadow magic? Perspective, she said after a moment's consideration. The deeper you work with shadows, the more you see the world in shades of gray rather than black and white. It changes how you perceive not just magic, but morality, loyalty, purpose. Is that why you warned me at the beginning? Harry asked. About being seduced by it? Partly, she acknowledged. Though I've come to believe that in your case, the change in perspective might be beneficial. What do you mean? You were raised in a magical tradition that divides everything into neat categories, dark and light, good and evil, Death Eater and Order member, Valeria explained. But reality is rarely so simple. Understanding that might ultimately serve you better in the conflict to come. It was an oddly philosophical turn for their usually practical training sessions. Harry sensed there was more behind this conversation than abstract magical theory. What's really going on, Valeria? He asked directly. You've been distant since the Azkaban breakout. What aren't you telling me? She hesitated, then reached into her pocket and withdrew a folded letter. This arrived from my father this morning. Harry took it with a feeling of trepidation. The letter was written in what he assumed was Russian, unintelligible to him. He's recalling me to Durmstrang, Valeria translated, her voice carefully neutral. Immediately. Harry felt as if he'd been struck. Why? The breakout changes the political calculation, she explained. The Dark Lord now has his inner circle restored. My father believes the conflict will escalate rapidly, and he wants me safely away from the epicenter. Away from me, you mean, Harry said quietly. Valeria didn't deny it. You are the primary target, Harry. Being close to you is, increasingly dangerous. So you're leaving. He couldn't keep the accusation from his voice. Just like that. I didn't say I was going, Valeria replied, a hint of her usual sharpness returning. I said my father has recalled me. Hope flared in Harry's chest. You're staying. I haven't decided, she admitted. It's complicated. Because of your family obligations. Because of many things. She looked at him intently. Including you. The simple admission hung in the air between them, charged with unspoken emotions. What happens if you disobey your father? Harry asked. Nothing immediately dramatic, Valeria said with a slight smile. I wouldn't be disowned or cursed. But it would represent a significant break from tradition. The Volkovs have always operated as a unified front in political matters. This isn't just politics, Harry pointed out. It's war. All the more reason for unity, she countered. But also all the more reason to be certain of where one stands. She moved closer to him, her expression softening. That's what I've been struggling with, Harry. When I came here, my path was clear: observe, assess, report back. But now? Now, he prompted gently. Now I find myself personally invested in a way I never anticipated, she admitted. In you. In what you're fighting for. In what we've built together. It was the closest she'd come to acknowledging the feelings that had been developing between them. Harry felt a surge of emotion, relief, joy, and something deeper he wasn't quite ready to name. Then stay, he said simply. Help me finish what we've started. It's not that simple, she sighed. If I stay, I place myself in direct opposition to the Dark Lord. My family would inevitably be drawn into your conflict. They're already in it, Harry argued. Everyone is. Neutrality is an illusion, Valeria. You said so yourself. Before she could respond, a silver light burst into the chamber, a Patronus in the shape of an otter. Hermione's voice emerged from it, urgent and frightened. Harry, come quickly. The vision, Sirius, Umbridge's office. The Patronus dissolved, leaving them staring at the empty space it had occupied. What was that about? Valeria asked, alarmed. I don't know, Harry said, already moving toward the door. But it's about Sirius, my godfather. Valeria caught his arm. Wait. You're not thinking clearly. This could be a trap. If Sirius is in danger, then we need information first, she insisted. You said Hermione mentioned a vision. Have you been having visions again? Harry paused, forcing himself to think rationally. No, not since. He touched his chest where the shadow binding had been performed. Not since the ritual. Valeria's expression grew grave. Then someone else has. Or wants you to think they have. She drew her wand. We need to find your friends before you do anything rash. They hurried through the shadowed corridors, using Harry's newly enhanced abilities to avoid detection. As they neared the entrance hall, they heard commotion, raised voices, the sounds of struggle. Peering cautiously around a corner, they saw a disturbing scene. Umbridge and her inquisitorial squad had captured Harry's friends. Ron, Hermione, Ginny, Neville, and Luna were being held at one point, surrounded by smug-looking Slytherins led by Draco Malfoy. Take them to my office, Umbridge was ordering, her girlish voice at odds with the malice in her expression. Potter will come for his friends eventually. It's a trap, Valeria whispered. They sent that Patronus to lure you out. But how? Harry whispered back. That was Hermione's Patronus. Under duress, perhaps, Valeria suggested. Or a clever forgery. They retreated to a secluded alcove to plan. Harry's mind was racing. If they're using my friends as bait, then they don't know where I am. That's an advantage. A small one, Valeria cautioned. What exactly would bring you running to Umbridge's office? The message mentioned Sirius and a vision. Harry explained about the recurring dreams he'd had earlier in the year, visions of a corridor leading to a door in the Department of Mysteries. Voldemort wants something there, he concluded. And they must be trying to use Sirius to lure me into going after it. The Department of Mysteries houses many dangerous artifacts and records, Valeria said thoughtfully. Including, if rumors are true, a comprehensive collection of prophecies. Harry's eyes widened as understanding dawned. The prophecy. The one about me and Voldemort. That's what he's after. It makes sense, Valeria nodded. Prophecies can only be retrieved by those they concern. If the Dark Lord can't access it himself, he needs me to get it for him, Harry finished. And he's using Sirius as bait. But how can we be sure Sirius is truly in danger? Valeria pressed. Is there a way to confirm his safety? Harry thought furiously. Grim old place, that's where he's been staying. But I can't flow there with Umbridge monitoring the fireplaces. What about the house elf? Valeria suggested. The one you mentioned that belongs to his family. Creature. Harry frowned. He hates Sirius. And me. But he's bound to the Black family, Valeria pointed out. He would know if Sirius was home or not. It was worth a try. Harry called softly, "Creature." With a crack, the ancient house elf appeared before them, his bloodshot eyes narrowing with dislike. The half-blood calls Creature. What does he want with Creature? Where's Sirius? Harry demanded. Is he at Grimmauld Place? A nasty grin spread across Creature's face. Master is not home. Master went out hours ago. Where did he go? Harry pressed. Creature doesn't know, the elf said with unconvincing innocence. Master doesn't tell Creature his plans. You're lying, Harry accused. Tell me where Sirius is. But Creature merely cackled and disappeared with another crack. That was unhelpful, Valeria observed dryly. He's hiding something, Harry said, growing more worried. If Sirius isn't home. We need to verify before acting, Valeria insisted. Is there anyone else you could contact? Anyone who would know Sirius's whereabouts? Harry thought desperately. Lupin, maybe. Or. An idea struck him. Snape. He's in the Order. He could contact headquarters. Then we find Snape, Valeria decided. Before you go charging off to the Ministry based on potentially false information. They made their way cautiously to the dungeons, using shadow concealment to avoid the increasing number of Inquisitorial Squad members patrolling the corridors. When they reached Snape's office, however, they found it empty. Now what? Harry asked, frustration mounting. We need to free your friends, Valeria said decisively. They're the immediate priority. Then we can address the situation with your godfather. Harry nodded, pushing down his worry about Sirius. Valeria was right, they needed to think strategically, not emotionally. They made their way toward Umbridge's office, moving through the shadows with practiced ease. As they approached, they could hear Umbridge's simpering voice through the door, interspersed with sounds of distress that Harry recognized as his friends. One last time, Miss Granger, Umbridge was saying. What was the message you sent to Potter? Where is he meant to go? I told you, Hermione's voice came, sounding tearful. It was just a warning about the history of magic exam. I don't know what you're talking about. A slap sounded, followed by an outraged cry from Ron. That's it, Harry muttered, anger surging. We're getting them out now. Wait, Valeria cautioned. We need a plan. There are at least 7 of them in there, all armed. I have a plan, Harry said grimly. Shadow walking. We go in through the darkness, take them by surprise. Valeria assessed him for a moment, then nodded. It could work. But you'll need to maintain focus despite the emotional situation. Can you do that? Yes, Harry said firmly. He'd been practicing emotional control alongside his shadow magic, understanding that strong feelings could disrupt the delicate balance needed for the more advanced techniques. Then let's do it, Valeria agreed. On my signal. They positioned themselves on either side of the door, pressed against the wall. Harry reached out with his enhanced senses, feeling the shadows within the room, behind the curtains, under the desk, in the corners. Valeria caught his eye and nodded once. Together, they stepped into the shadows of the corridor wall, allowing the darkness to envelop them. The sensation of shadow walking had become familiar to Harry now, the momentary disorientation, the feeling of moving through thick liquid, the strange non-light of the shadow realm. He focused on the darkness within Umbridge's office, using it as a beacon to guide his passage. They emerged simultaneously from opposite corners of the room, behind the Inquisitorial Squad members. The element of surprise was total. Umbridge was mid-sentence, her wand pointed at Hermione's face, when Harry and Valeria materialized from the shadows. Stupefy! Harry shouted, directing his spell at Umbridge. She crumpled before she could react, her wand clattering to the floor. Chaos erupted. The Slytherins whirled around, disoriented by attackers appearing from nowhere. Valeria moved with fluid grace, disabling 3 of them with rapid stunning spells before they could raise their wands. Malfoy managed to fire off a curse that Harry deflected with a hastily raised shadow shield, a technique he'd only recently mastered. The spell rebounded, striking Crabbe, who collapsed in a heap. Expelliarmus! Ron shouted, having seized Umbridge's fallen wand. Malfoy's wand flew from his hand, leaving him defenseless. In less than 30 seconds, it was over. The Inquisitorial squad lay unconscious or bound, and Harry's friends were free, looking stunned but relieved. "Harry!" Hermione exclaimed. Where did you come from?" "Shadow walking," Harry explained briefly. "Are you all right?" "Been better," Ron said, rubbing his wrists where magical restraints had bound him. "Umbridge caught us trying to use her fireplace to contact headquarters." "So you did send that Patronus," Harry said to Hermione. She nodded, looking grim. "I had a chance while they were dealing with the others." "Harry, it's Sirius. I think he's in trouble." "What happened?" Valeria asked, securing the door with a complex locking charm. "Harry had a vision during our History of Magic exam," Hermione explained. "He saw Voldemort torturing Sirius in the Department of Mysteries." Harry frowned. "But I didn't have any vision. I was with Valeria in the ritual chamber." A heavy silence fell over the room as the implication sank in. "If you didn't have the vision," Ginny said slowly, "then who did?" "No one," Valeria said flatly. "It was a false message, planted to make you believe Potter had seen something he hadn't." "But who would?" Neville began, then stopped as understanding dawned on all their faces. "Voldemort," Harry said quietly. "He's been trying to access the Department of Mysteries all year. Now he's trying to lure me there by making you think Sirius is in danger." "But is he?" Luna asked, her dreamy voice unusually focused. "In danger, I mean." "That's what we need to find out," Harry said firmly. "We were looking for Snape to contact headquarters when we heard you were captured. We need to verify Sirius's safety before doing anything else," Valeria insisted. "The Dark Lord is clearly setting a trap." "But if there's even a chance Sirius is really at the Ministry," Ron began. "Then we still need more information," Valeria cut him off. "Rushing in blindly is exactly what the Dark Lord wants." Hermione was watching Valeria with newfound respect. "She's right," she said to Harry. "We need to check Grimmauld Place first." "I already tried Creature," Harry said. "He claims Sirius isn't home, but he was lying about something." "What about the other house elf?" Luna suggested unexpectedly. "The one that works at Hogwarts now. Didn't you say he was devoted to you, Harry?" "Dobby!" Harry exclaimed, hope surging. "Dobby!" With a loud crack, the house elf appeared, his tennis ball-sized eyes widening at the scene in Umbridge's office. "Harry Potter called Dobby, sir." "Dobby, I need your help," Harry said urgently. "Can you go to number 12 Grimmauld Place and see if Sirius Black is there? It's extremely important." "Dobby will do this for Harry Potter," the elf declared, disappearing with another crack. While they waited, they bound the Inquisitorial squad more securely and discussed their options. "If Sirius is safe, then we stay put," Hermione insisted. "If he's not." "If he's not, we still don't rush to the Ministry," Valeria said firmly. "We contact the Order of the Phoenix first." "How?" Ginny asked. "Umbridge is monitoring all communications." "Not all," Valeria said, giving Harry a significant look. "Shadow projection could reach someone at Grimmauld Place, with the right anchor." Harry nodded. He had only managed short-distance projections so far, but with Valeria's guidance, a longer attempt might be possible. Before they could discuss it further, Dobby reappeared, looking troubled. "Dobby has been to the House of Black, sir," he reported. "Sirius Black is not there. Only the mean old house elf, who told Dobby that his master went to save Harry Potter." Harry's blood ran cold. "He thinks I'm in danger at the Ministry." "It's a double trap," Valeria realized. "Voldemort lured Sirius to the Department of Mysteries by making him believe you were there, and now he's trying to lure you by making your friends believe Sirius is there." "We have to go," Harry said immediately, starting for the door. "If Sirius is walking into a trap, Harry, wait," Hermione grabbed his arm. "We need to think this through. If it is a trap, rushing in is exactly what Voldemort wants. Every minute we delay puts Sirius in more danger," Harry argued. "And charging in unprepared puts you in danger," Valeria countered. "Which is precisely the Dark Lord's goal." A tense silence fell over the group, broken only by the occasional groan from one of the stunned Slytherins. "We need the order," Ron finally said. "This is too big for just us." "But how do we contact them in time?" Ginny pressed. Harry looked at Valeria, a plan forming in his mind. "We split up," he decided. "Valeria and I will go to the Ministry using shadow walking. The rest of you find a way to contact the Order, use the flow in McGonagall's office, send patron uses, whatever it takes." "Shadow walking over that distance would be extremely dangerous," Valeria warned. "Even with your enhanced abilities since the binding ritual. Do we have a faster option?" Harry challenged. Valeria considered, then shook her head reluctantly. "No. But we'll need to make several jumps, not attempt it all at once." "I'm coming with you," Ron said firmly. "Me too," Hermione added. Soon they were all insisting on accompanying Harry to the Ministry. "No," Harry said firmly. "Valeria and I can move faster and more stealthily through the shadows. The rest of you focus on getting the Order there as backup." "Harry's right," Valeria supported him. "Shadow walking with more than 2 people is exponentially more difficult. We'd risk losing someone in the Shadow Realm." This sobering thought quieted the protests somewhat. "Fine," Hermione finally conceded. "But promise you won't confront Voldemort directly. Just find Sirius and get out." "I promise," Harry said, though part of him wondered if such a promise could be kept if they were walking into a trap. They quickly formed a plan. Hermione, Ron, and Ginny would attempt to use the flue in McGonagall's office to contact Grimmauld Place. Neville and Luna would secure their unconscious captives and stand guard to prevent anyone from raising an alarm. "We'll need an anchor," Valeria said to Harry as they prepared to leave. "Something from the Ministry to guide our shadow walking." Harry thought quickly. "I don't have anything from the Department of Mystery specifically, but..." He pulled out the silver compass she had given him. "This guided me through the shadows before. Could it be modified to seek Sirius?" Valeria took the compass, studying it thoughtfully. "Perhaps. With something of his, a personal item with a strong connection." Harry had nothing of Sirius's with him, but then he remembered. The mirror. Sirius gave me a 2-way mirror to contact him. It's in my trunk in the dormitory. "That would be perfect," Valeria agreed. "The magical connection between paired objects is ideal for direction finding." They made a quick detour to Gryffindor Tower, where Harry retrieved the small mirror from his trunk. He'd never used it, something he now regretted bitterly. If he'd remembered it earlier, perhaps this entire situation could have been avoided. Valeria worked quickly, modifying the compass with a series of complex spells that incorporated the mirror's magical signature. When she finished, the needle glowed faintly blue and oriented itself steadily in one direction. "It's tracking the mirror's pair," she explained. "If Sirius has his mirror with him, this will lead us to him through the shadows." They returned to the others briefly to finalize their plans. "Be careful," Hermione said, hugging Harry tightly. "And remember your promise." We'll get the order there as fast as we can, Ron assured him, clapping him on the shoulder. Harry nodded, his throat tight with emotion. Despite his determination, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something far more dangerous than even he anticipated. As the others departed on their mission to contact the order, Harry and Valeria remained alone in Umbridge's now secured office. "Are you ready for this?" Valeria asked quietly. Harry met her gaze steadily. "I've been ready since the graveyard last year." This was always coming. Something shifted in Valeria's expression, respect, concern, and something deeper, more personal. "Whatever happens," she said, taking his hand firmly in hers, "I'm with you." The simple declaration held more meaning than elaborate promises could have. Harry squeezed her hand in silent acknowledgement. "Let's go," he said. Together, they stepped into the deepest shadow of Umbridge's office, letting the darkness embrace them as they began their journey to the Ministry of Magic, and whatever trap awaited them there. Chapter 3, The Shadow Queen Rises. The Shadow Realm wasn't meant for human travel. That thought hit Harry as he and Valeria moved through the infinite darkness, guided only by the modified compass in his hand. It felt different from their previous shadow walks, deeper, vaster, as if they'd ventured beyond the shallow edges into an ocean of darkness. "Stay focused," Valeria's voice came from beside him, sounding strangely distant despite her tight grip on his hand. "The compass is our anchor. Don't look at anything else." Harry nodded, keeping his eyes fixed on the glowing needle. He could sense things moving in the darkness around them. Not creatures exactly, but presences, ancient, curious, watching. "What are they?" he whispered. "Shadow entities," Valeria replied tersely. "Ignore them. They're drawn to conscious minds in this realm." They pressed on, the compass pulling them forward. Harry had expected the journey to be instantaneous, like apparition, but this was more like swimming through thick, cold liquid. Time seemed meaningless here, distance an abstract concept. Just when Harry felt his concentration beginning to waver, the darkness ahead thinned. "There," Valeria said. "Our first exit point." They emerged into the cool night air of London, in an alleyway not far from the visitors' entrance to the ministry. Harry gasped, filling his lungs gratefully after the oppressive atmosphere of the Shadow Realm. "You okay?" Valeria asked, studying his face with concern. "Yeah," Harry nodded, though he felt drained. "That was intense." "Long-distance shadowwalking is dangerous for precisely that reason," she said. "The deeper you go, the more it draws on your magical core." Harry checked the compass, which was now pointing directly toward the dilapidated telephone booth that served as the ministry's visitor entrance. "He's definitely there," Harry said grimly. "The compass is still tracking him." "Or his mirror," Valeria cautioned. "Remember, this could still be an elaborate trap." They approached the telephone booth cautiously, wands ready. 2 badges clattered into the coin return slot: Harry Potter, Rescue Mission, and Valeria Volkov, Rescue Mission. "The Ministry of Magic wishes you a pleasant evening," the voice said blandly as the telephone booth began to descend. "They're not even bothering to hide it's a trap," Valeria observed dryly, pinning her badge to her robes. The atrium was eerily empty when they arrived, the security desk abandoned, the golden fountain gleaming in the dim light. Their footsteps echoed on the polished floor as they moved toward the elevators. "Department of Mysteries," Harry said, remembering his visions of the corridor. Level 9. The elevator ride was tense, silent. Harry's scar wasn't hurting, another sign that something was off about this whole situation. If Voldemort was really here, torturing Sirius, he should be feeling it. "Be ready for anything," Valeria said quietly as the elevator doors opened to reveal the plain black corridor that had haunted Harry's dreams for months. The black door at the end stood slightly ajar, an obvious invitation. "Definitely a trap," Harry muttered. "Yes," Valeria agreed. "But perhaps not only for you." She drew her wand, and Harry noticed the shadows around them responding to her presence, darkening and shifting. Since the binding ritual, he'd become more attuned to how her magic affected the darkness, different from his own, more refined, more controlled. "What's the plan?" Harry asked, drawing his own wand. "Find Sirius if he's here," Valeria said. "Avoid engagement with Death Eaters when possible. Use shadow concealment to our advantage." Harry nodded. With a shared look of determination, they moved forward, the darkness gathering around them like a protective cloak. Beyond the black door lay a circular room with identical doors spaced evenly around the walls. As soon as they entered, the wall began to spin, the doors blurring until it was impossible to tell which one they'd come through. "Great," Harry muttered when the spinning stopped. "Now what?" Valeria closed her eyes, extending her hand toward the shadows between the doors. After a moment, she pointed. "That one. I can sense movement beyond it." They approached cautiously. When Harry pushed the door open, they found themselves in a vast, cathedral-like room filled with towering shelves laden with small glass orbs. Each emitted a faint, ghostly light. "The Hall of Prophecy," Valeria whispered, looking around with academic interest despite the danger. "I've read about this place." Harry consulted the compass, which was pointing deeper into the hall. "This way." They moved between the towering shelves, their footsteps muffled by the carpet of dust. The compass led them through the maze, deeper and deeper into the vast chamber. "Row 97, Harry read from a small plaque as they turned a corner. "The compass says we're close." They rounded the final shelf, wands raised, prepared for an ambush, but the space beyond was empty. No Sirius. No Death Eaters. Just more shelves of glowing prophecies. "He's not here," Harry said, frustration and worry warring in his voice. "But the compass." Valeria examined the needle more carefully. "It's not pointing straight ahead anymore. It's angling, up." They both looked upward. Suspended near the ceiling, almost invisible in the gloom, was Sirius's mirror, placed there deliberately, obviously. "Definitely a trap," Valeria confirmed unnecessarily. Before Harry could respond, a cold, drawling voice came from behind them. My. Harry Potter and a Volkov girl. What an unexpected pleasure." They whirled to find Lucius Malfoy standing at the end of the row, flanked by a half-dozen masked Death Eaters. Harry recognized Bellatrix Lestrange among them, her heavy-lidded eyes gleaming with malicious anticipation. "Where's Sirius?" Harry demanded, even as he subtly shifted his stance to shield Valeria. A pointless gesture, he realized immediately, she was already moving to cover his flank, their positioning automatic after weeks of training together. "The blood traitor?" Bellatrix giggled, the sound sending chills down Harry's spine. "Cozy at home, I expect. None the wiser that his godson is walking into a trap." So Sirius was safe. Relief washed over Harry, quickly replaced by cold anger at being manipulated. "Bellatrix Lestrange," Valeria said coolly, her wand trained on the witch. "My father sends his regards." Bellatrix's smile faltered slightly. "Volkov, is it? Gregory's daughter? What would Daddy say about his precious heir consorting with Potter?" "He'd say I've secured a valuable alliance," Valeria replied, her tone casual but her posture ready for combat. "The Volkovs have always backed the winning side." Lucius Malfoy stepped forward, his focus entirely on Harry. "Enough pleasantries. Potter, there's something we need you to do for us." He gestured to a shelf nearby. "Fetch that prophecy, the one with your name on it." Harry's eyes followed the gesture to a small, dusty orb labeled with his name and Voldemort's. So that was what this was about, the prophecy that had sent Voldemort after him as a baby. "Why should I?" Harry asked, playing for time. He could feel Valeria beside him, subtly gathering the shadows around them. "Because," Malfoy said silkily, "if you don't, we'll start using the Cruciatus curse on your pretty little friend here. The Dark Lord only specified that you remain alive. He said nothing about intact." Harry tensed, but Valeria's soft laugh surprised everyone. "You clearly don't know much about Durmstrang's training methods," she said, sounding almost bored. "The Cruciatus would be a refreshing change from Professor Karkaroff's discipline techniques." Her casual confidence clearly threw the Death Eaters, who exchanged uncertain glances. "Get the prophecy, Harry," Valeria said suddenly, her voice deliberately loud. "We should hear what it says before these half-wits break it." "How? You're not the only ones who can set a trap," Sirius said coolly. "Though using my mirror was a nice touch." Chaos erupted. Spells flew in all directions, shattering prophecies and sending shelves crashing to the floor. Harry grabbed Valeria's hand, pulling her behind a toppled shelf as curses exploded around them. "The Order got our message," Harry said, relief washing over him. "But how did they know where exactly to find us?" "Your shadow magic," Valeria explained quickly. "Since the binding ritual, you leave traces in the darkness that those who know what to look for can follow. Your godfather must have tracked you." Before Harry could process this, a jet of purple light shot over their shelter, forcing them to duck. "We need to get out of here," Valeria said urgently. "The prophecy is what they want." "As long as you have it, I'm the primary target," Harry finished. "But I'm not leaving without Sirius and the others." Valeria nodded, accepting his decision without argument. "Then we fight our way out. Together." She held out her hand, and Harry took it without hesitation. Immediately, he felt the shadows around them respond, thickening, gathering. "Shadow casting," Valeria said. "Like we practiced, but with both our magic combined. Ready?" Harry nodded, focusing his will. Together, they directed the accumulated darkness outward in a powerful wave that swept through the hall, momentarily blinding the Death Eaters and giving the Order members a crucial advantage. In the confusion, Harry and Valeria broke cover, running toward Sirius, who was dueling Malfoy with savage intensity. "Harry!" Sirius shouted, spotting them. "Get out of here. Take the prophecy and go." "Not without you." Harry called back, deflecting a curse with a hastily conjured shadow shield. Valeria's hand closed around his arm. "There are too many. We need to retreat and regroup." She was right. Despite the Order's arrival, they were outnumbered. More Death Eaters had appeared, flooding into the Hall of Prophecy from other doors. "Fall back." Moody's voice boomed over the chaos. "To the Death Chamber." They fought their way toward a door at the far end of the hall, the Order members forming a protective formation around Harry. Valeria stayed at his side, her wand moving in complex patterns as she manipulated the shadows to confuse and disorient their pursuers. They burst through the door into another vast room. In its center stood a raised stone dais, upon which was an ancient, crumbling archway. A tattered veil hung from it, swaying slightly though there was no wind. "The veil," Valeria whispered, a note of awe in her voice. "A direct passage to the realm of death." Harry felt an odd pull toward the archway, whispers seemed to emanate from beyond the veil, calling to him. "Don't look at it," Lupin warned sharply, pulling Harry away. "It entrances the unwary." The Death Eaters poured into the chamber behind them, spells flying. The battle resumed with renewed intensity, Order members and Death Eaters locked in deadly combat around the room. Harry found himself separated from the others, cornered by Lucius Malfoy and another masked Death Eater. The prophecy was still clutched tightly in his hand. "Nowhere to run, Potter," Malfoy taunted, advancing slowly. "The Dark Lord is on his way. Give us the prophecy, and perhaps he'll make your death quick." "I don't think so," Harry replied, raising his wand. But before he could cast, a wave of darkness swept between him and the Death Eaters. Valeria materialized from the shadows beside him, her eyes gleaming with fierce determination. "You'll have to go through me first, Malfoy." "With pleasure, Volkov," Malfoy sneered. "Your father will understand. Business is business, after all." He cast a killing curse that Valeria deflected with a conjured shadow barrier, a technique she'd only recently taught Harry. The deadly green light dissipated harmlessly against the darkness. Shadow magic, Malfoy breathed, momentarily shocked. So the rumors about you are true. You have no idea, Valeria replied coldly. What followed was the most impressive display of magical combat Harry had ever witnessed. Valeria moved like a dancer, shadows flowing from her wand and hands in deadly patterns. She wasn't just defending, she was attacking with the darkness itself, forming it into tendrils that wrapped around Malfoy's legs, whips that lashed at his face, barriers that absorbed and neutralized his curses. Harry joined the fight, his own shadow magic complementing hers. Where her techniques were refined, precise, his were raw and powerful. Together, they pushed Malfoy back, forcing him to retreat step by step. Across the chamber, Sirius was dueling Bellatrix near the dais with the archway. Harry caught glimpses of their fight as he battled alongside Valeria, Sirius laughing as he dodged a jet of red light, taunting his cousin. "Come on, you can do better than that," Sirius yelled, his voice echoing around the cavernous room. Horror washed over Harry as he saw Bellatrix's second spell hit Sirius squarely in the chest. His godfather's laughter hadn't quite died from his face, but his eyes widened in shock. He seemed to take an age to fall, his body arching gracefully backward toward the ancient archway. "No!" Harry screamed, abandoning his duel, running toward the dais. Valeria's hand caught his arm, yanking him back with surprising strength. "Don't! The veil will take you too." Lupin appeared, grabbing Harry from the other side. "She's right, Harry. He's gone. We can still save him." Harry struggled against their hold, watching in despair as Sirius's body passed through the tattered curtain. Sirius! But his godfather didn't reappear on the other side of the archway. He was simply gone. Bellatrix's triumphant scream echoed through the chamber. "I killed Sirius Black," she sang, her voice manic with glee. "I killed Sirius Black." Rage unlike anything Harry had ever known coursed through him. He broke free of Lupin's grip, the prophecy forgotten, dropped somewhere in the chaos. His only thought was to make Bellatrix pay. "Harry, no!" Valeria shouted, but he was already running, pursuing Bellatrix as she fled the chamber. He chased her through room after room, back into the spinning chamber, and finally into the ministry atrium. Grief and fury fueled his magic as he cast spell after spell at her retreating form. "Come back and fight," he yelled, his voice raw. Bellatrix turned, a cruel smile on her face. Ah, did little Potter love his dog-father? Crucio. Harry dove behind the fountain, the curse missing him by inches. Shadows gathered around him instinctively, responding to his emotional turmoil. "You need to mean it, Potter," Bellatrix taunted. "You need to really want to cause pain, righteous anger won't hurt me for long." Harry emerged from cover, darkness swirling around him like a living cloak. The shadow-binding ritual had connected him to this power, and now his grief was channeling it in ways he'd never experienced during training. "You have no idea what I'm capable of," he said, his voice eerily calm despite the storm raging inside him. He raised his wand, and the shadows responded, gathering from every corner of the atrium, forming into a massive wave that surged toward Bellatrix. Her eyes widened in genuine fear as the darkness engulfed her, lifting her off her feet and slamming her against a wall. Harry approached slowly, maintaining his control of the shadows that now bound her like living restraints. Part of him wanted to crush her, to make her suffer as he was suffering. The darkness responded to that desire, tightening around her. "Harry," came Valeria's voice from behind him, quiet but urgent. "Don't lose yourself to it." He didn't turn, his focus entirely on Bellatrix, who was struggling to breathe as the shadows constricted. "She killed Sirius," he said flatly. "She deserves to die." "Yes, she does," Valeria agreed, moving to stand beside him. "But not at the cost of your soul." Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. "Remember what I told you about shadow magic? It responds to emotion, but mastery requires control. Harry felt her presence like an anchor, pulling him back from the edge of an abyss he hadn't even realized he was approaching. The shadows loosened slightly, though still holding Bellatrix firmly. A slow clap echoed through the atrium. "Impressive, Harry Potter. Very impressive indeed." A tall, skeletally thin figure emerged from the flames of a nearby fireplace. Lord Voldemort stood before them, his snake-like face impassive, red eyes fixed on Harry. "My lord!" Bellatrix cried out, relief and worship in her voice. "Help me!" Voldemort ignored her, his attention solely on Harry and Valeria. "Shadow magic," he observed. "An unexpected development. And a Volkov as your tutor, no less." His lipless mouth curved in a parody of a smile. "Your father would be most interested to learn of your allegiances, girl." "My father understands the value of backing the right side," Valeria replied, her voice steady despite facing the Dark Lord himself. "And it isn't yours." "Bold words," Voldemort said softly. "We shall see if you still believe them after I've killed your student." He raised his wand casually, almost lazily. "Avada!" The words died in his throat as green flames erupted in all the fireplaces around the atrium simultaneously. Albus Dumbledore stepped calmly from one, his wand already moving in complex patterns. "It was foolish of you to come here tonight, Tom," Dumbledore said quietly. "The Aurors are on their way. By which time I shall be gone," Voldemort spat, "and you, dead." What followed was a duel of such intensity and complexity that Harry could barely follow it. Dumbledore and Voldemort moved with blinding speed, their spells creating explosions of light and sound that filled the atrium. In the chaos, Harry released his shadow hold on Bellatrix, who immediately crawled toward her master. Valeria pulled Harry behind a pillar for cover. "We need to get out of here," she said urgently. "This is beyond even our combined abilities." Harry nodded reluctantly. "Shadowwalking? Too dangerous with this much magical discharge in the air," Valeria replied, eyeing the spectacular battle. "The fluctuations could send us anywhere, or nowhere." A massive shock wave from a rebounding spell knocked them both off their feet. Harry scrambled up first, pulling Valeria with him just as a chunk of ceiling crashed down where they'd been standing. "Move!" he shouted, leading her in a zigzag pattern toward the visitors' entrance. They were halfway there when Voldemort, momentarily pushed back by Dumbledore, spotted their escape attempt. With a snarl of fury, he directed a killing curse at Valeria's unprotected back. Harry saw it coming as if in slow motion. Without conscious thought, he pulled on every scrap of shadow magic he'd learned, forming the darkness into a solid wall between Valeria and the approaching green light. The killing curse struck the shadow barrier with a sound like thunder. For a split second, everything seemed to freeze, the curse suspended in the darkness, neither penetrating nor dissipating. Then, impossibly, the shadow barrier absorbed the killing curse entirely. Voldemort's inhuman face registered shock. Impossible. Dumbledore seized the moment of distraction, binding Voldemort in a cage of golden light that forced the Dark Lord to turn his attention back to their duel. Harry grabbed Valeria's hand, and they ran for the telephone booth. Behind them, the battle between Dumbledore and Voldemort reached new heights of intensity, the very foundations of the Ministry shaking with the force of their magic. They reached the booth, squeezing inside and hammering the button to ascend. As they rose toward street level, they caught a final glimpse of the atrium. Voldemort, realizing he was outmatched with Aurors on the way, vanished in a column of black smoke. Bellatrix disappeared with him, leaving Dumbledore standing alone amidst the destruction. The cool night air hit them as the telephone booth reached the surface. They stumbled out, gasping, adrenaline still coursing through their veins. "You just blocked an Avada Kedavra," Valeria said, her voice stunned. "With shadow magic. That's theoretically impossible." "I didn't really think about it," Harry admitted, still shaking from the exertion and the aftermath of battle. "I just reacted." "That's exactly why it worked," Valeria said, a note of wonder in her voice. Pure intent, channeled through your connection to the shadows. No hesitation, no doubt. Harry barely registered her words. The reality of what had happened was crashing down on him. Sirius is dead, he said, his voice hollow. He's really gone. Valeria's expression softened immediately. Without hesitation, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. I'm sorry, Harry, she whispered against his hair. I'm so sorry. He stood rigid for a moment, then collapsed into her embrace, grief finally overwhelming him. She held him tightly as tears came, her steady presence an anchor in the storm of his emotions. How long they stood there, Harry couldn't say. Eventually, the sound of multiple apparitions nearby forced them apart. The Aurors, Valeria said, glancing toward the sounds. We should go before they start asking questions we can't answer. Harry nodded, wiping his face roughly. Back to Hogwarts? Not directly, Valeria decided. We're both too magically drained for long-distance shadow walking. Let's find a safe place to rest first. They made their way through the dark London streets, eventually finding a small wizarding inn tucked between two Muggle buildings. The tired-looking witch at the reception barely glanced at them as Valeria paid for a room with silver coins from her pocket. The room was small but clean, with a single bed and a chair by the window. Harry sank onto the edge of the bed, exhaustion hitting him like a physical weight. You should sleep, Valeria said gently, taking the chair. I'll keep watch. You need rest too, Harry pointed out. We both used a lot of magic tonight. Valeria hesitated, then nodded. A few hours, then. We'll head back to Hogwarts at dawn. Harry shifted over, making room for her on the narrow bed. After a moment's hesitation, she joined him, both of them too tired to feel awkward about the proximity. They lay in silence for a while, processing the night's events. Despite his exhaustion, sleep eluded Harry, his mind replaying Sirius's fall through the veil over and over. It wasn't your fault, Valeria said quietly, as if reading his thoughts. It was a trap set by the Dark Lord, executed by Bellatrix. I should have known better, Harry said bitterly. If I'd just used that mirror Sirius gave me in the first place. Don't, Valeria interrupted, turning to face him in the darkness. That path leads nowhere good, Harry. Believe me, I know. Something in her voice made him turn to look at her. What happened? Valeria was quiet for a long moment. When I was 9, she finally said, my mother was killed by a rival magical family. A blood feud that had simmered for generations. She swallowed audibly. I blamed myself for years because I'd distracted her at a crucial moment. I thought if I'd been quieter, more obedient, she might have seen the attack coming. That wasn't your fault, Harry said immediately. No more than this was yours, she replied softly. But it took me years to accept that. Without thinking, Harry reached out, finding her hand in the darkness between them. She squeezed his fingers gently. What happens now? He asked after a while. Voldemort's exposed. The Ministry can't deny he's back anymore. Now the real war begins, Valeria said soberly. And everyone will have to choose sides. The implication hung in the air between them. Your father, Harry began. Will expect me to return to Durmstrang immediately, she finished. To secure the family's position in the coming conflict. And will you go? Harry asked, trying to keep his voice neutral despite the sudden tightness in his chest. Valeria didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice held a certainty that hadn't been there before. No, she said simply. My place is here now. With the order? Harry asked. Valeria turned fully toward him, her blue eyes visible even in the dim light. With you, Harry. The simple declaration hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Harry felt something shift inside him, a piece falling into place that he hadn't even known was missing. Valeria, he began, not sure what he wanted to say but feeling the need to say something. She silenced him by pressing her fingers gently against his lips. "Sleep," she said softly. "We'll talk tomorrow." Despite his racing thoughts, exhaustion finally claimed him, pulling him into a deep, dreamless sleep. Harry woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of quiet conversation. He blinked, disoriented, then remembered where he was and why. The grief of Sirius's loss hit him anew, though the raw edge had dulled somewhat. Valeria was by the window, speaking in low tones to a familiar figure with long silver hair. "Professor Dumbledore." Harry sat up, rubbing his eyes to make sure he wasn't imagining things. "Good morning, Harry," Dumbledore said gravely. "I'm glad to find you both safe." Harry swung his legs over the edge of the bed. "How did you find us?" "Professor Dumbledore has been tracking us through the shadows," Valeria explained. "Much as we anticipated the Death Eaters might. I've been aware of your extracurricular studies for some time, Harry," Dumbledore said, a hint of his usual twinkle returning to his blue eyes. "Though I confess, Miss Volkov's expertise in shadow magic exceeded my expectations." Harry wasn't sure how to respond to that. Part of him wanted to be angry at Dumbledore for keeping his distance all year, for not telling him about the prophecy, for all the secrets and half-truths. But another part recognized that now wasn't the time. "Sirius," he said instead. "Is he really?" "I'm afraid so," Dumbledore confirmed gently. "The veil is a direct passage to the realm of death. There is no return." Harry nodded, having expected the answer but hoping against hope for a different one. "What happens now?" he asked, unconsciously echoing his question to Valeria from the night before. "Now," Dumbledore said, "we prepare for open war. Voldemort has been exposed. Cornelius Fudge himself saw him in the Ministry last night before he escaped. The wizarding world can no longer deny his return." "And Umbridge?" Harry asked. "The situation at Hogwarts?" "Professor Umbridge has had an unfortunate encounter with the centaur herd in the Forbidden Forest," Dumbledore said, his eyes twinkling despite the serious situation. "She has been removed to St. Mungo's, and I have been reinstated as headmaster." "Good," Harry said firmly. "Indeed," Dumbledore agreed. "Now, I suggest we return to Hogwarts. Your friends are quite worried, and there is much to discuss." He extended his arms, offering them side-along apparition. Harry hesitated, looking at Valeria. "We can make our own way back," he said to Dumbledore. "Through the shadows." Dumbledore studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. I shall see you both at the castle." With a graceful turn, he disappeared with a soft pop. Once they were alone, Harry turned to Valeria. "Are you sure about staying? About not returning to Durmstrang?" "I've never been more certain of anything," she replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "My father will understand, eventually. The Volkovs adapt to changing circumstances, it's how we've survived for centuries." "And if he doesn't understand?" Harry pressed. "Then I make my own path," she said simply. "As I believe I already have." Something in her steady confidence, her certainty in her choice, resonated deeply with Harry. After a lifetime of having his path determined by prophecy, by Voldemort's actions, by Dumbledore's plans, the idea of choosing his own way forward was powerful. "Ready to go back?" Valeria asked, offering her hand. Harry took it, feeling the now familiar connection between them strengthen at the touch. "Together," he said. She smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her usually serious face. "Together." They moved to the darkest corner of the room, calling the shadows to them with practiced ease. As the darkness enveloped them, Harry felt not fear but a sense of rightness, of belonging. With Valeria beside him, the Shadow Realm wasn't a place of danger but a path forward, one they were choosing together. The return to Hogwarts brought a whirlwind of activity. Their friends were waiting, full of questions about the battle at the Ministry. The Daily Prophet carried the headline "HEWHO must not be named returns" in giant type across the front page, alongside a smaller but equally significant story, Dumbledore reinstated as headmaster. Harry found himself recounting the events at the Ministry multiple times, to his friends, to the Order members who came to check on him, to Dumbledore himself in a private meeting in the headmaster's office. It was during this meeting that Harry finally learned the full contents of the prophecy that had shaped his entire life, the one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the seventh month dies, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. So it's true, Harry said when Dumbledore finished reciting it. What Karlov told us about the life tether. I'm keeping Voldemort alive, and he's keeping me alive. Not precisely, Dumbledore corrected gently. The prophecy states that neither can live while the other survives, not that neither can die while the other lives. A subtle but crucial difference. What does it mean, then? Harry asked, frustration seeping into his voice. That one of us has to kill the other, eventually. It means that the connection between you and Lord Voldemort must be resolved, one way or another, Dumbledore explained. Your destinies are intertwined. And this, power the Dark Lord knows not. Harry pressed. What is it? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. I believe you've begun to discover it already, Harry. Your capacity for love, a force Voldemort has never understood, manifests in many ways. Including, it seems, through rather extraordinary applications of shadow magic. Harry thought of the moment in the Ministry atrium when he blocked Voldemort's killing curse to protect Valeria. Not out of hatred for Voldemort, but out of desperate need to keep her safe. Miss Volkov has proven to be a most unexpected ally, Dumbledore continued, as if reading Harry's thoughts. Her decision to remain at Hogwarts rather than return to Durmstrang is significant. She's chosen her side, Harry said simply. Indeed she has, Dumbledore agreed. And in doing so, has perhaps altered the course of this conflict in ways even I cannot predict. When Harry left Dumbledore's office, he found Valeria waiting for him in the corridor, leaning casually against a stone gargoyle. How much did he tell you? She asked as they walked together toward the lake. Everything, I think, Harry replied. The full prophecy, the reason Voldemort came after me as a baby, why my mother's sacrifice protected me. And your connection to the Dark Lord? That too, Harry nodded. Though Dumbledore seems to think the life tether interpretation isn't quite right. They reached the lake's edge, finding a secluded spot beneath a willow tree. The June sun was warm, the war still feeling distant despite the morning's headlines. What happens now? Valeria asked, echoing the question that seemed to define their relationship. Now I train, Harry said with newfound determination. I learn everything I can, prepare for what's coming. And when the time comes to face Voldemort again, we'll face him together, Valeria finished firmly. Harry turned to look at her, struck again by how much had changed since that first encounter in defense against the dark arts class. The cool, calculating Durmstrang which had become, what? His teacher, certainly. His ally. His friend. And something more, something still evolving but undeniably real. Why did you really stay? He asked quietly. The truth. Valeria met his gaze unflinchingly. Because I believe in you, Harry Potter. Not just your power or your potential, but your heart. She smiled slightly. A rather sentimental reason for a Volkov, I know. I'm glad you stayed, Harry said simply, reaching for her hand. She twined her fingers with his. So am I. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the giant squid lazily break the surface of the lake. The future loomed before them, uncertain and dangerous, but for the first time, Harry felt truly prepared to face it, not alone, as he'd always assumed he would be, but with someone who had chosen to stand beside him, shadow to shadow, magic to magic, heart to heart. You know, Harry said after a while, they'll call you my Shadow Queen now. Valeria laughed, the sound light and genuine. Is that so bad? No, Harry smiled, looking at their intertwined hands. No, I think it suits you perfectly. As the sun began to set over Hogwarts, casting long shadows across the grounds, Harry Potter and Valeria Volkov remained by the lake, two figures silhouetted against the fading light, the boy who lived and his shadow queen, facing the gathering darkness together. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.